All right, we're going to call this meeting to order. Roll call.
McKnight.
Here.
Myers.
Here.
Roa.
Here.
Vogel.
Here.
Kinder.
Here. Pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to start with public comment. Anybody that wants to comment can just stand where they are and speak. We don't have like a podium. So, first person, Eric Kantz.
Good evening. I'm glad to be here. My opportunity to voice my opinion and facts. My name is Eric Kantz. I'm a longtime resident of the area. I've lived in and out of Meadville for many years. We have our roots here. I'm a business owner, and I've also owned a construction business. I've been in construction for 30 years, so I'm pretty knowledgeable. Business owner with my wife, and we're trying to establish some roots for our kids. Trying to establish businesses for our kids, so when we go to retire, we can pass them on. So that's why I'm speaking here today. And I'm going to start off with Allegheny. Allegheny continues to push our agenda on the city of Meadville. It started, and it's very apparent that it started in the elections, and it moved on to rental inspections, and now we see this Green Act. So 70% of the planning team of the Meadville Act Climate Change is Allegheny. So everywhere we look, we're seeing Allegheny. Now, I don't have a problem with that if they are true residents of Meadville. My problem is, like the lady that spoke at the last meeting I was at, the president. She's not going to live here. She could care less. 4 years, she's out of here. 5 years, whoever. This Meadville's a stepping stone for Allegheny. Let's face facts. That's my concern. So they come in and they push their agenda, then they leave. Then we're stuck with the mess. So after, and forgive me, I did not read through the 93 pages of this disaster. The city, as far as I know, is running in a deficit. And everywhere that I go through this act change, Meadville's throwing money. And also going back to the last meeting I was at, and decidedly, you guys did a great job by shooting down the liquor. But I didn't hear anybody up there ask, what are you going to do for the city of Meadville? How does this help the city of Meadville? Not one of you asked. And I got to say that I was disappointed in that. Now, you did the right thing by voting it down, but in my opinion, whether it's federal, state, city, local, any government is a business. It should be run as a business. You need equity. You need money to pay for streets. You need money for everything. What I'm not seeing is any ideas from anybody getting money in. So reading through this, the very first one, I'm a builder. I saw moss roofs. There's a lot of signals going up in my head about a moss roof. One is the cost, and it's very hard to find a definite cost, but the cheapest that I found was $20 a square foot. Now that's probably assuming that that house in Meadville that has an 8 to 12 pitch that the moss can stand on doesn't fall in, because it adds 80 pounds per square foot. That's not with the water. That's just 80 pounds per square foot, where a roof is, a builder is going about 27, 20, 30, 40 pounds per square foot. So now you're opening up a can of worms that, now, is the city gonna be liable for that when that roof caves in? Because we're making you do the smallest roof? And also, you gotta say, okay, well, if the landlord has to put this boss roof on, well, he's not gonna incur that cost, it's gonna go down to rent. So now we go into the rent thing again. So I really believe this is all about rent control. Eventually, it's a backdoor way. It doesn't say it, but I believe it's a backdoor way. Now, and we own one rental meter, so this doesn't really fully affect me, the rental inspections, but it does globally. If you start throwing in, making landlords doing something, Briar's are gonna disappear. All these big rentals are gonna disappear. Now, you're done. So, the next one was on chart R3, upgrade city rental regulations, including energy standards. So I'm assuming that's coming in, everybody has to have a high efficiency furnace. Well, that's great, that's awesome, but who's gonna pay for it? You know, if I'm gonna pay for it, if I own one house and I gotta put a new furnace in there, I'm gonna pay for it, but my rent's going. Or we're gonna do rent control. I can't raise it, so now I'm gonna sell it. So this one cracks me up. Eco's 2LF6, build a tree canopy. So we're gonna plant trees beside a house to grow up so it'll shed the light, the heat off the roof of the house. Well, any second grader will say, doesn't it take 50 years for the tree to grow? And again, who's gonna pay for the trees? And again, it's going back to the landlords, because, and through this act, and again, I didn't read it all, it's based on low income. Everywhere you enter, it's helping low income areas. And I don't have a problem with that, because there are grants out there, there's, HUD, and, everything's out there. But we all focus on helping low income. What about the taxpayers? What about the Zares? What about the guys that are actually trying to make Meadville better and putting money into Meadville?
Mr. Kantz, I'm gonna let you finish, but each person has 5 minutes at the beginning of the,
Okay.
you're about at 6, but
Okay.
if you wanna. Sure.
I'll finish up here. And the permeable, the pavement, that's absurd. And again, there we go, we're gonna throw it back on the cost of the landlord. And I didn't realize that I had time constraints. So, it kind of threw me off here, because this green act, I don't even know what, climate act change or whatever it is doing nothing but costing the city money. And I see where, like, let's say cinema, you tear the cinema down and somebody wants to put a park in there. Well, I own 2 businesses. And I have customers that won't come to my business because there's no place to park. And we want to put a garden in there. That's it.
Very good.
Bob Rogers? Roger?
Hi, I'm Bob Rogers. I'm 74 years old. I've lived in the city my entire life. I even have the same phone number, which I don't too many people can say that, but I do. I paid over $100,000 in property taxes so far, well in the excess. And the hospital took my previous house and put a concrete parking garage in. So we moved around the corner, and now we have a very large 5,000 square foot house. And I don't want to turn that into a parking lot either, because it is a green space. And let's be clear, I'm not opposed to the climate change and action plan. I'm opposed to what you are proposing to do. Because your climate action plan is a backdoor approach to rent control and then rental inspections. Okay? And that will increase the rent substantially. Now this is an old beautiful house, and too many of them are being torn down in the city right now because nobody can afford to keep them up. So when you do afford to keep them up, the only way you could do is rent part of it out. Now updated this house with a new roof, new furnaces, storm windows, hot water tanks, electric, plumbing, a brick parking lot that allows water to flow into a cistern that we put in, okay, and we have drains to retain the runoff water, which we get a lot of in Meadville. Meadville is not a dry town. We have planted 27 mature trees on the property, which consist of a green canopy. Last year, it cost us $3,000 to have these trees trimmed out, which we do sporadically every few years to keep them in good shape as possible. Now, you want to take and have us plant trees, well, that's fine. The trees I planted, the electric company has come along and cut them down. And what they haven't cut down, the city has made me trim them to the point where they're useless to even be a tree there. So we kind of got to go in a little different direction here. You know, the ramifications could be huge on the property owners and the rentals. You talk about low-income people. Well, we put most of our money back into the rental property. It takes 2 of our properties just to pay the taxes, the insurance, and the water bill. The rest of it basically go back into the modification of the properties. Now, this climate action plan that you proposed should include the surrounding townships. What good is it to have a climate action plan when right across the street, the person could burn a ton of garbage and pollute the air, which they do. The city should be going after people about climate change by not allowing people to burn garbage in town, for one thing. That's a huge problem, huge. Now, if we're worried about the rental inspection, if you go through with that and our place doesn't meet your standards, which we just put in 5 new furnaces in this one building 2 years ago, if they don't meet your qualifications, I'm going to have to return and put them all in again. Okay? Which could be thousands of dollars. We're talking thousands. If we have to put all new energy efficiency windows in, because you say we have to have them, that's going to be more. We could be up in the neighborhood of $60,000 or $80,000 to retain this one house. We've gone through the house with a thermal imaging camera and detected all the areas that have caused problems about leakage and plugged them up and did it ourselves. Well, because of that, the gas and electric bills for these apartments are very low. They run between $45 and $67 a month for electric and gas combined. If we have to go and put all new windows and rebuild the house basically again, we have to raise the rent by possibly $250 a month just to break even, because we can't absorb that. And like this gentleman says, we'd like to leave the house to our kids. But the problem is, the kids don't want to stay here. Why? Because there's no work. Stagnant economy, taxes are too high. What are we going to do if we can't afford to have this house? It'll just go into disarray, be torn down, and it'll be an empty parking lot full of concrete, which is a sad situation to lose another beautiful property in the city of Meadville. Now, Jim is the only person that stopped by our property and knows what it looks like. When people come around and ask the climate control plan and what our thought and what the survey is, not one single person stopped at our house to talk to us. Not one. And it's a beautiful, beautiful climate area up there. And I don't think it needs to be changed. Thank you.
Thank you. Alicia.
Yay, you got it right.
I did get it right. I practiced.
That might mean something bad then, I guess.
Right?
Hello, council. I come to you as a business owner and taxpayer. As you're aware, I conducted a survey to gain insight as to what residents and taxpayers thought of the climate action plan. Of the 45 responses received, 37 individuals disagree that this should be a policy you sign. 2 are neutral and 6 agree you should sign this into policy. This means 82% of those surveyed feel this should not be a policy. 35 individuals feel city council should discontinue using staff time to pursue this, and 33 individuals feel like city council should focus on ways to bring people here. Gretchen, you had asked me to put a question asking how these individuals thought we could bring people here. Lower taxes, less government interference, inviting businesses here, fixing sidewalks, and focusing on local events were some of the ideas given. Of which, inviting businesses here corresponds with a council priority that was mentioned back in January. It's also something Larry brought up at the May 4th meeting. If we bring businesses here, jobs will follow, along with people, all of which can help the city grow and prosper. However, it is interesting to note that on page 25 of the Climate Action Plan, they see our declining population as a benefit, as it would easily decrease our greenhouse gas emissions with very little effort. This also decreases city revenues, as well as decreases employees and patrons at local establishments. If I need to continue to elaborate as to how that's a bad thing, you shouldn't be sitting on city council. I also looked at the other 10 municipalities Autumn mentioned. All of the plans must have come from the same cookie cutter, because the bulk of the plan is the same for all. The fill-in-the-blank style is evident by some of the ideas, which would be outlandish to pursue here in Meadville, PA. Permeable pavement is unsuitable for regions which have snow to plow and below freezing temperatures. This would turn our roads into potholes. Solar panels in a region which is one of the cloudiest places on earth, coupled with the initiative to expand our shade canopy, obscuring what little sunlight we do have, the end result would be ludicrous. The plan also fails to mention how they would address the hazardous waste recycling of the solar panel components. Next, I want to point out 3 instances over the last 3 years where climate action plan type items were voted on by prior councils. LED light conversion, green space development, and an application to participate in a solar program. I have specific dates and details if you'd like me to elaborate, but my point with these examples is that there was no climate action plan in place. These were brought to council and voted on without issue. I do, however, want to elaborate on the art green space and the requirement of the city to match the grant in the amount of $2,500 per year for 4 years. Which brings me to my next point. You are going to financially burden our residents, business owners, and taxpayers for initiatives that benefit the county. By signing this as a city, you agree to incur, at the expense of the residents, business owners, and taxpayers, the match requirements set forth for any such grants. You, as city council, will knowingly sign the city up to bear the burden of financial responsibility for the removal of invasive plant species on an out-of-town walking trail, to eliminate zebra mussels along French Creek, which, for the record, runs through 72 municipalities in 5 counties and 2 states. But yes, let's have our city residents bear that burden, right? How is this fair for our city residents and taxpayers to carry the cost for the county? We already do carry the load when it comes to city services. Why should we be on the hook for grant matching responsibility on initiatives that are county-wide? The fact is, we shouldn't. In fact, 100 individuals who represent residents, taxpayers, and business owners feel the same way and signed a petition asking City Council to not adopt this plan. My final point is that I requested and received all 69 of the climate plan responses that Council had received in regards to this plan. 37 of the 64 replies that were in support of this plan came from individuals who work at Allegheny College who would obviously support something their alumni or coworkers were working on. This equates to approximately 58% of your responses. I then found myself getting deja vu, reading, governments across the country should be working to mitigate climate change and reduce carbon emissions. I fully support the Climate Action Plan in its current form and hope you adopt it without delay. In fact, 44 of the 64 replies in support of this plan had that wording. That's approximately 69% of your replies that are copy and paste responses. To me, these copy and paste replies don't represent authentic responses. What this shows to me is that when you say jump, your followers say how high.
Nancy?
Hello. I'm a former city employee. I am a city resident. I reside at 379 Cole Drive. I own my home. I pay taxes. I work in the city of Meadville, and I pay taxes to the city of Meadville. I believe the proposed Climate Action Plan fossil fuel initiative will turn homeowners into renters and renters into the homeless. Take an average home in Meadville. It uses 218 CCF, hundreds of cubic feet, during a cold month. That gas bill would be $194. Now, electric heat costs 3 times as much as gas. So using the electric equivalent to heat would cost that same homeowner $882 for 1 month. And that is if electricity were generated using fossil fuel. Add another 100 for the other electrical uses in the house. And this cost does not account for the capital investment that would be needed to transform from gas to electric. Let's do this calculation using wind power. Now the bill would be $1,332 for 1 month. This is just for the heat, not the other electric you use. Add another 100 to that, and you'd be paying $1,432 plus the cost of conversion. So homeowners such as myself, if you think about retiring or selling your home, would be forced to take any equity that you had in your home upon that sale, maybe move into a small apartment somewhere. Now, for a renter, the situation's even worse. Some of those elderly moderate income renters will be forced into homelessness and will be relegated to living in a senior living center. This is just one concept in the 97-page climate plan that I have addressed tonight. There are many others, some which pertain to West Mead and Vernon. Last I knew, we were talking about the city of Meadville. Why they're in there baffles me, okay? Other items, solar panels in this area. Permeable paving, are you kidding me? This isn't the South, okay? Last night on the news, I saw where electric costs are rising another 35%. Gas is over $5 a gallon. Food is costing 12 to 15% more per month. A couple council meetings ago, Councilman McKnight mentioned that folks were asking him about jobs. I think it appears that he understands that residents are more concerned about economic stability, and that should be a priority rather than these plans. While I would be the first to commend folks who volunteered their time on this project, know that there are many, many, many others in this town that volunteer for nonprofits and other ways to give back in this community every single day. I've done it for 50 years. Given the state of the economy at this time, and the fact that you are a few months out from trying to begin working on a budget, which to my belief is $800,000 out of bounds, I wonder what the rush is on this. So perhaps lending some assistance toward a regional or a county-wide plan would be better served. Thank you.
Karen Kress?
Thank you. My name is Karen Kress, and I pay taxes on over 35 units in the city of Meadville. I've been a business owner and a homeowner for 42 years. I love Meadville, and I plan to always be a part of it. First, I would like to commend those writing the climate action plan. Yes, I read the entire document, and I found it well-written, organized, and informative. There is no doubt in my mind that those who contributed to this truly have good intentions. However, in my world, I deal with the nitty-gritty of life. I drive a 1980 Chevy Ford truck with an 8-foot bed. That truck and I have cleaned up more of the environment here in the city than most of you can imagine. Part of my schedule this week was to clean out over 20 city trash cans. No one in this room would aspire to that job, especially once you see how most people treat their trash. And from firsthand experience, I can attest to the fact that a lot of our population have no idea what to put in their recycling bin. There are many items in this plan that make no sense to me. Do we want to expand our tree shade canopy, or do we want solar panels? Those two things in this area that some call dreary do not seem compatible. Do we want to plant fruit trees on our streets? The cleanup cost of that, in order that we don't have rotting and slippery fruit that can become very attractive to vermin, would be very high, not to mention the liability. In my opinion, the city has two major issues that far outweigh this lofty plan. Our city budget is purportedly, right now, over $800,000 short of meeting our needs. Also, the housing market needs people who want to keep their investments in the city. We are shortly going to find ourselves in a situation where investors want nothing to do with restrictions that are being imposed. The return on their investment is being eaten away by requirements of pie-in-the-sky goals, and that is only going to hurt the neediest of our large rental population. I am not seeing an understanding for what we need to do to have more affordable housing in the city. If tying a climate action plan to the requirements for licensing and rental property sounds like a good idea to you, please think about the cost of that and who is going to pay it. Let's make landlords put in all new appliances in their units and upgrade the heating system to electric run by solar panels and then require them to put on a Boss roof. Why would anyone invest their money in a market with those types of requirements? And there goes a huge opportunity for housing. Perhaps a better plan would be one that would make it appealing for an investor to buy something that is blighted in the city and put money into improving it. This plan calls for the blighted property that is torn down to be turned into green space. There goes more tax dollar right out the window. How about trying to make it appealing for an investor to rehab the blighted property? Maybe give incentives to improve the property and then collect taxes for all of us taxpayers to benefit from that. This program is an unrealistic approach to addressing issues that will actually be addressed naturally through improving our city and through the efforts that are already being put into place in our region and our country through innovation and standards in the industry. There are many things in this plan that are valuable to think about and ideas for improvement. But there is no way that something like this should be brought in as a policy of the city. We have far more pressing matters. Our budget, our taxes, something that may be new to the council, how to nurture relationships in our city that keep investors in the housing market, who are already shy about buying in such a high-taxed city. I will try to continue to spend my time on my properties with my old Chevy truck so that I will have well-maintained property in the housing market of Meadville. I hope that you choose to spend your time and your vote to help toward the goal of attracting investors like myself to the city and not deterring them. Thank you.
Lance Smith?
Yeah, my name's Lance Smith. I'll try to keep this quick for everybody. I'm 26 years old. I invest in real estate in the area. I consider myself pretty ambitious, but not stupid. And I've had to, the last couple of years, continue to ask myself why I'm still here and why I invest in this area. The only conclusion I've got to is, unlike 90% of my family who's moved south and out of this area, my elderly grandparents who can't afford to stay here unless I stay and pay the property taxes for them, and my mother and stepdad who I employ. I've constantly, over the last couple of years, been watching all the policies and the property taxes and everything that seems to want to push me and the people I work with. I partner with a lot of investors from as far as Hawaii, investing in this area. I started investing in Titusville and figured out pretty quick that was a bad idea. And I'm starting to question investing in this area. A couple of years ago, I started looking into other markets down south, and I came across a beachfront property that was $1.7 million, and the property taxes were $1,400 a year. A couple years ago, I purchased a property that was $17,000 in Meadville. The property taxes were $1,400. That property on the beach as of now is about doubled in value, and my property taxes here have gone up a couple $100. I'm strongly against this policy, like everybody has said, that seems to continually attack landlords and investors. And like I said, it's becoming harder and harder to think that I should stay and invest in the area. And again, I would strongly recommend that you guys vote against this. That's all.
Jenny Tompkins?
name is Jenny Tompkins. I live at 665 North Street. I'm a homeowner in the city, but not a landlord, I wanted to specify. I actually came to Meadville originally to become an environmental science student of Allegheny College. I've now lived here for almost 8.5 years, 4.5 of which I've been a homeowner and a professional in the area. I am largely a remote worker with my partner, and I work for an environmental nonprofit regionally advocating for clean water policy. I wanted to come in support of not only the passage of the Climate Action Plan, but also passage of the proposed ordinance for an Environmental Advisory Council. Someone mentioned that the DEP's local climate action program might be cookie cutter, and I know that the city of Meadville utilized that program, as have about 380, likely more like 400 municipalities throughout the Commonwealth. I think one of the values of that framework is that it aligns with the state's climate action plan. Pennsylvania actually has more political jurisdictions, 5 times as many, I believe, as the state of California, but 1/3 of the population and a significantly lower amount of land area. So part of the complexity of anything in Pennsylvania is the sheer number of political subdivisions that we have. And one of the benefits of that DEP program is that it filters through and allows local municipalities to tailor their needs within the principles laid out in the state's climate action plan. So I applaud it for that in particular. I think that when you have a plan, I'm reluctant to call anything that's a plan a policy, a mandate, or a law, or anything. Each of those recommendations in that plan have to be highly vetted and implemented through its own individual process. And so none of those would operate as mandates for this plan is published. They would operate as recommendations for further implementation down the line. So while I think there are valid concerns about some of those in the document, I think each of those would be properly vetted and there would be additional opportunities to provide comment and tailor those conditions, tailor those specifications to our local conditions. I've also extensively studied environmental advisory councils in my role. I know that there are about 150 throughout the Commonwealth. I've talked to counterparts in Bethlehem, Allentown, Harrisburg, the city of Easton, and several boroughs and townships, because I'm interested in this framework for other municipalities in Erie, in particular in the Pennsylvania Lake Erie watershed. And I've seen what they've been able to accomplish. Some of their EACs, even though Act 148 of 1973 that allows for the creation of EACs has obviously been in place for a very long time, a lot of the successful EACs date back to the early 2000s. And I encourage you to look at Bethlehem in particular. They have a great framework. They actually operate off of a climate action plan, but the EAC was created, then the climate action plan through this exact same program was created, and now the EAC is responsible for helping to implement. And they've been able to accomplish a lot in the 2 decades or so since their formation, much of which is not specific to policy. It's actually specific to on-the-ground implementation, public education, outreach with school districts. EACs have a variety of opportunities to do outreach and make connections. They also can fundraise on their own. The Bethlehem EACs continues to have an operating budget of about $200, which is just about enough for them to publish their notices in the newspaper. So most of the work that they've done under their climate action plan through fundraising or grants. So I wanted to encourage that too, that the city would not be paying for a lot of this investment. They'd be creating the framework for there to be an incentive for a public-private partnership, or for there to be some sort of incentive otherwise for that action to be taken. So I encourage others to review the We Can Serve PA resources online. We Can Serve PA is the one that operates the network of EACs throughout the Commonwealth, 150 that exist. They have examples of what EACs have done relative to their climate action plans. And there's a great body of work out there that shows that these 2 frameworks work well in tandem and independently. So I'd love also if someone afterward wants to catch up with me, just because I'm really curious to hear more about the connection between rental inspection and the climate action plan. I believe the climate action plan's inception dates from prior to the conversation the city's having about rental inspection. So I may be wrong on that, so please someone catch up with me later, because I want to see that connection that you all see, because that wasn't abundantly clear to me in my review of the plan. I had no role in creating this plan. I'm just a resident who also happens to be a professional environmentalist, but thank you for your time, and again, I support approval of the plan and the creation of an EAC for the city.
Monica Hargenrader.
I own 2 duplexes within the city of Meadville. My husband and I had been looking to grow further. However, at this point, we have held off while we decide we want to continue growing or staying in this area with our investments in general. But I do have this to say regarding the climate action plan. Part of being a good leader is knowing those that you lead, knowing what they need and what could benefit most of the residents within your city. Can you truly say any of the items in this climate action plan are what is best for your city right now? Your citizens are struggling right now and you are not helping them. When most of those people are struggling to pay for gas to get to work, you want to implement a plan that could cost your residents thousands in hard-earned money that they very likely don't have. Your residents are currently trying to budget their funds to last as long as possible in order to feed, clothe, and house their families. They don't need to worry about how to afford a high-efficiency furnace, especially if their current furnace works fine right now. The residents of your city should be able to focus on how to pay their electric bill that just got raised approximately 20% or more, instead of trying to purchase fruit trees to plant along your sidewalks. Your neighbors should be able to focus on how to pay their taxes that were also raised, instead of paying to install solar panels on their homes. I could go on, but I would hope by now you have understood my point. Instead of focusing your time and energy and wasting what resources the city does have on yet another pet project that will most likely be abandoned in a couple years like all the other ones, I encourage you to instead use those resources to help your citizens. Help them find the resources they need to navigate through the extremely high inflation we are all a victim of right now. Within your climate action plan, many of the ideas wanting to be implemented requires funding. The plan further states the funding still needs secured to institute these programs. What's the plan if you don't get the grants or the funding? Is this a burden you intend to pass on to the investors or your residents? The same ones you state you are trying to help are the very ones this plan will hurt and the most. I encourage you to vote no to a plan that will hurt your neighbors further. We don't need this right now. We need cheaper gas, electric, and food. We need a break on the ever-growing taxes and city fees. Many of the items in the climate action plan are beyond your citizens' reach and are unachievable on such a small scale within the city of Meadville. Furthermore, I'll leave you with this. When will you open your eyes and see the damage you're causing to the city? The residents that have already left or are on the way out because they either can't afford to live here anymore or they don't want to. They don't want to have such an increase of expenses and outlandish rules to follow. When will you see the large amount of investors that are running from your city? Businesses are closing, landlords are closing up, mom and pop shops that have been around for years are closing their doors. Please don't contribute to this problem. I know in Autumn's climate action plan, a declining population is great for the climate, but from an economic standpoint, the city will be hurt even worse financially if this continues. You'll be left with a ghost town. People are running from places like California with similar roles due to the high living expenses caused by items just like you're trying to implement. If a ghost town is what your goal is, by all means keep going down this road. But if you truly want a prosperous Meadville, abandon the climate action plan and use your resources to help your citizens. Thanks.
Ron Irwin.
I'm Ron Irwin, and ironically in Erie last week, I seen this van, I crossed out some of the advertising and everything. I just had to take a picture of it because I think this van represents everything you need to know about the climate action plan. And I'm not talking about the rusted out condition. They are boasting 12 years in business and are still using an internal combustion engine that runs on gasoline, not solar panels. In other words, they are not using their own products to sell, maintain, or install their products. Maybe this is why Autumn said, and I quote, "This plan may be imperfect." Maybe she knows fossil fuels are required to make green energy products. In fact, there isn't a single green energy manufacturing plant in the world that uses their own products to create more of their products. Maybe she realizes Jim and Larry are correct about regulations chasing people and businesses away from Meadville. Maybe she realized this plan does nothing to stop the top polluting countries of the world. What we should all agree on is this. If the major supporter of this plan says it's imperfect, there should be no more discussion on it. But Autumn also said, and again I quote, in the course of 2 years, et cetera, et cetera. Well, to give you a little history of our family, my wife's great-grandfather migrated to the United States in 1892. That was 132 years ago. And he became a very successful businessman, had various markets around town. We purchased our first property in Meadville 17 years ago. Others have lived in Meadville for generations. Why doesn't Autumn want our voices heard? Maybe Autumn answered that question with her final quote that I have for you tonight. And again, I quote, "That's the kind of place I want to live in." We keep hearing about my Meadville. My question is, what about our Meadville? Why is Autumn trying to make Meadville into a place she would like to live in, instead of leaving it to the Meadville we want to live in? In conclusion, the city is already facing a major financial shortfall, which you've heard a couple times already. We do not need to burden the city taxpayers and business owners any further. And I also signed up for at the end of the meeting for a non-agenda item.
Great. Taylor Hinton?
Hi, resident of Meadville. I'm speaking in support of the climate action plan. It's fitting that it's 98 degrees today. I was frustrated that we postponed so much, but now I'm kind of like, oh, that works out. Because as climate change continues, we're going to have hotter days. We're going to have more hotter days. Actually, while I was sitting here, my mom texted me and we're supposed to talk later, and she said, hopefully the power stays on. And I said, why would your power go out? And she said, frequently our power goes out when so many people are using their air conditioning. So we're all connected. My mom doesn't live here, she lives in Cleveland, but we're all connected, which is important to remember. Also, having more warmer days as climate change increases. I don't know how many of you are keyed into the news in Yellowstone right now. Yellowstone National Park had historic rainfall this year and historic snowmelt because of the more warmer days we are having, and they currently have historic flooding, and it has destroyed a road to the middle of Yellowstone. So that's going to, I know we like to talk about the economy right now, so I'll tap into that. It is going to destroy towns in Yellowstone National Park. I'm not saying we have the kind of tourism Yellowstone does, though I'd love to someday. I've been a part of some community events that bring people into town, and I am in support of that. But I think, we are living in unprecedented times, for better or for worse. I think there are weather events that we don't even know are possible that can happen if we don't address certain climate issues. So we like to think maybe we are not in the situation they're in Yellowstone National Park right now, but we don't know what could happen in these unprecedented times. So I just think if we can't see the connections between our actions now and future weather events, I think we're doomed to those weather events. I was going to end there, but then I just felt like I needed to say I find it disappointing that our city continues to value the word of a handful of vocal people who can make these meetings over maybe not around this issue, but previously we had petitions of 200 signatures that were kind of brushed off. We had 60 emails in support of the climate action plan that I felt brushed off. I know some people didn't like the cookie cutter feel of those, but I think we're all working, busy people, and if the best we can do is send off an email to voice our opinion, I'm in support of that kind of civic engagement. And I also want to point out that maybe more of our citizens don't come to this meeting to speak because they're afraid of the folks who own their homes retaliating against them. I luckily am a homeowner now, but I have previously rented from people in this room, and I'm not sure I would feel comfortable speaking on behalf of a plan that so many of you oppose in fear of retaliation. I'm not accusing any of you of anything. I'm saying I would not feel safe. I also agree with Jenny that I don't see the threat to our homes the way some of you do, so I'd love to have future conversations about that. It also sounds like these are recommendations that are open to further discussion, so we're not committing anyone to anything at this point. We're simply providing recommendations so we don't end up maybe in dire consequences in the future. So, thanks for your time.
David Miller?
David Miller, 608 Chestnut Street. Thanks for being here. Thanks for showing up. And I want to applaud Jenny Tompkins for her clarification of what climate action plans are about and for connecting them to climate action plans across the state, across the country. And thank Taylor Hinton for zeroing in on the stark reality of climate change, which hovers over us more and more. As a member of Meadville's Climate Action Task Force, I want to emphasize two key areas to think about in relation to our proposed plan. It is first of all critical to keep in mind that our CAP, if passed, will represent nothing less than a blueprint for the revitalization of our entire community, socially, economically, and culturally. Secondly, passing the plan is only a preliminary step to implementing. Over the past 3 years, we have decidedly not devoted our efforts to creating yet another document to be endorsed, then simply shelved and gradually forgotten. It is essential that each and all of you who support the plan, for whatever reasons, resolve to get involved in making it a reality in one way or another. As many of us as possible must do our part. Whether endorsed by City Council tonight or not, our intention in presenting this plan is to begin shifting the center of gravity from our task force to an Environmental Action Committee, an EAC, consisting of a group of citizens, 4 to 7 usually, who are willing to step forward and ensure that the various aspects of the plan are actually put in place. For this, we need people who are not only informed and knowledgeable, but who are committed to moving things forward. Not only continually monitoring progress, but making the various components of the plan concrete. That is to say, functional in a timely and sustainable manner. In short, we need people who understand the gravity of the climate challenge we face, and who also realize the ways in which this process can fundamentally address the needs, goals, and desires that should motivate us all to strive for a better world for our children and for future generations. Action now, effective, thoughtful, and informed action will make a difference, a huge difference, in our quality of life, and more importantly, in the quality of life experienced by those who are younger than us, including our daughters and sons, who did nothing to cause the problem, the crisis that we face, and who deserve every bit as much as we do to live fulfilling and prosperous lives, brimming with love for each other and hope for the future. These efforts begin and proceed through a continual process of education. I can only begin here to detail the potentially enormous benefits and co-benefits of our collective lives and those who come after us, which effective and ongoing climate action will bring about. Climate change, or what I prefer to call climate weirding, will cost our economy far more in the long run, and I would say already has in the short run, than any expenses incurred through the implementation of our CAP. In the near term, we as a community stand to receive large amounts of government funding to improve our infrastructure, solarize our schools, and lower our energy costs through weatherization as well as through renewable energy sources than most of us are aware of or can even imagine. If we are poised to make the most of this funding, something immediate climate action will accomplish, our economic life will be positively transformed at every level, not only locally but nationally, creating many new enterprises as well as myriad jobs and saving enormous amounts of money on waste. Let me just point out what the cost of solar energy has fallen, that the cost of solar energy has fallen 75% in the last decade or so and promises to continue dropping from here on in. It is perfectly viable Even in overcast Meadville, you hear a lot of nonsense about this, and far more storable and transportable than most people are aware of. Whereas gasoline and electric are only going up, as we well know. Lower energy costs and more efficient infrastructure will grease the wheels of our business and manufacturing sector, even as they make our lives cleaner, healthier, and happier. Careful planning, as set forth in our plan, will help us avoid the thousands lost because of the inefficient design and operation of our former city offices on Water Street.
David, I don't mean to interrupt you. You're right at 5 minutes. If you want to
Okay,
finish up.
I'm going to be done as quick as possible. Only a little less tangible, but even more important in the long run, our community-wide efforts will provide healing balm to our sadly fractured democracy, fostering a common sense of purpose and meaning by moderating our increasingly busy lives with an exhilarating vision of saving our breathtakingly beautiful, yet oh so precarious planet from further desecration. And for what in return, after all? We need to ask such fundamental questions as we build on the answers to them with ever new questions and ever more thoughtful responses. Such life-preserving curiosity, the eternal why that drives our promise and prospects of the human race, will in turn help rescue our youth from the alarming epidemic of mental illness overtaking them in the last few decades, and many of us as well. And we must know, has only been exacerbated, not caused by COVID. It is clear from numerous studies that nagging anxiety over potentially apocalyptic climate change contributes mightily to the negative effects wrought by the growing surveillance of society over all of us, but especially over our young people, along with the increasingly debilitating deficit of meaning we face. Let me end by noting how much of the Meadville community already has going for it in our efforts to make things better. So many grassroots efforts concerned with improving the lives of our children and those of us less materially well off. I will merely point to those members of the Food for Thought group currently involved in an attempt at bettering the health and welfare as well as education of our children through a variety of means, including renewed summer parks programs in which children are encouraged to learn by playing, to get to know nature as an exciting and healing force in our lives, and to interact with gardening and other life-giving engagements.
Thank you, David. I'm sorry, it said you're at like 7 minutes. I apologize.
Thanks to City Council for considering this.
I know.
Gary Van Buren?
Okay, I'm not that wordy. Business owner, taxpayer. 2 words that best describe the impetus behind this type of action are, to me, in my eyes, are hyperbole and hysteria. And they lead to words like this gentleman used, crises. And we all know, never let a good crisis go to waste, right? A lot of people are making a good living on this type of plan, as we've heard from some of them this evening. The first paragraph is basically just an example of my feelings toward the whole thing. That is just speculation. It says seasonal variations, extreme weather events, catastrophic natural disasters, climate-related health impacts are becoming more intense and frequent as climate change threatens, on and on and on and on. It's just, it's a lot of nice words that are all put together to create a lot of hype and a lot of hyperbole. There are a lot of scientists, probably the scientists are divided on whether this is man-made, all this is, that we can do a thing about it. And we somehow always hear from the liberal side, the liberal media, and the side that brings all this out and predicts gloom and doom. This effort isn't even going to be county-wide, and it shouldn't be Meadville-wide either. But, you know, to say that there's going to be anything, that this comprehensive plan should be enacted, it's just over the top as far as I'm concerned. It says we want to inspire and motivate by ensuring that all residents understand the dire impact of climate change. You know, I say go ahead and inspire and motivate if you want to propagandize and indoctrinate them that there's a dire impact going on, but I don't buy into it. And some of the words that this plan is using, like implementing this plan will demand community-wide effort, and net zero emissions by 2050 is the goal. It's like the other side of this argument is that CO2 is a good gas. We've been taught that, you know, the trees need it and that it's good. And all of a sudden we're hearing from the liberal side that this is some kind of a poison. It isn't. It's a natural occurrence, and you know that the trees need it. Okay, I've got a lot of thoughts here, and I don't want to prevail upon to take the time, but I do believe. Okay, one of the things that they have written down here is housing. Expand weatherization programs that offer free retrofits. Where is there anything free? You know, I mean, somebody pays for it, so there is nothing free. So the words free in here are just wonderful, but the fact of the matter is, it's going to be passed on to the landlords, of which I am, and then passed on down to the poorest of the people. The people can't even afford a home. It's going to be passed on down to them, and we're going to have more poverty in our city than we've ever had. This is just more government overreach, and my illustration of government is that they make a lot of dictates, but they don't pay the price. And they're like, I'm a farm boy, and so I'll liken it to the goldenrod in the field that just, they've got rhizomes and they just keep growing and growing and growing and take over the rest of the crop. And government just takes over the rest of the freedoms of our lives. How far am I?
You're at 4 minutes. Yeah.
Great. Hoping I was about done. All right, so I've just been jotting down notes and tried to do this before we got here, and time just ran out. So it's going to be a little sketchy. But no matter if it's a dry day or a wet day or a cold day or a hot day, it's all because of climate change. We've got a crisis, so we're going to use it. We've always had wet days, dry days, cold days, hot days, everywhere. Not just here, everywhere. But the climate is changing, or hot days, climate is changing whether we do anything about it or not. It's always been that way. You know, as long as I've lived, we've had basically the same kind of weather. And I look out west and I see that Lake Mead, for example, is drying up. Well, of course, they're pumping, they've got more people that they've ever had out there using water from that reservoir, and surprise, it's drying up. Go figure. Scientists are not united, like I said, but we're just hearing from the one side, and we're hearing from academia. Academia speaks, and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Greta Thunberg, Screech, and city councils like this one follow their lead. Hopefully not, but that's the pattern. Government dictates but doesn't pay the price. Costs go to the tenant and ends up in poverty. I actually did catch some of this without looking at my notes. Okay, trees referred to by the first speaker here not only take a long time to provide that canopy, but they also are very destructive in foundations. I know from personal experience, and also under sidewalks. They like to lift them up and then we get to pay for them.
Gary, you're right at 6 minutes, but you can finish up.
Okay, well, I would just, okay, I have two thoughts. One is that I had always wondered back in the day when the Jim Jones cult had killed all his people, drank poison, how could people be led to do that? And I'm seeing the same thing here. It's like this whole thing is a cult, and they're only hearing one side of it. They're not hearing the other side of it. That's not science. That's voodoo science. And then the last thing I'll say is just say no to illegal drugs and to this climate action plan. Thank you.
That was our last. That's it. Yeah, that was
Am I allowed to talk?
Is there anybody else that has a comment? Sure.
Thank you. Hi. Hi, my name is Amelia. I live in Meadville. I've got 3 kids. I've been a homeowner here for 7 years, and I'm an economist. So I guess I just want to touch on a couple items that I heard. I think one of the main things I'm concerned about is that it seems like a lot of people here think that this is going to be a new law that's going to mandate things. And it seems like that is absolutely not the case, as we've heard from several experts in the room. So it is a climate action plan. There are ideas, there are avenues that we could go down as a community, but it's not new mandates, new taxes, new laws. And so I would understand if anyone's feeling freaked out about the idea of high taxes, new programs that we don't have the funding for, et cetera. That would be a very scary thing to consider, and I wouldn't want to sign off on that. But this isn't that at all. So I think there's a huge misunderstanding based on what I'm hearing. And a lot of folks need to maybe go back and read the thing again to figure out what it is actually doing. And then the next thing I want to just say is that, we heard that there's concern about cost of addressing climate change, and that is a real concern. Like, it will take investment to address climate change. But investment can also help create wealth in the future, right? You can invest in something and create jobs by doing that. Like, you're talking about retrofitting things, planting trees, whatever, that's jobs. Y'all are worried about people not wanting to come to Meadville. This can make Meadville more beautiful. It can make Meadville more shady, right? It can make Meadville nicer to visit, and it can also create jobs at the same time. Not that it's mandating that, but it's on a list of items that could be considered for a climate action plan. So I think we all, are really just very stressed out about the current state of the economy, and that is understandable, right? Prices are high, especially food prices and gas prices, and everyone needs to buy that stuff. So that is really concerning. But I can tell you right now that if climate change is not addressed and addressed in a serious way, those problems are absolutely just going to get worse in the future. Completely worse for our kids and for our grandkids, and I don't think anybody wants that. So I think having some reasonable steps taken now through a nice list of ideas as a community that we could consider is a great way to start. And since it's not mandating anything, I think we should explore all these things and see what might work for us when we get down to the details and actually doing something. So I hope that you vote for it, and thank you for letting me talk.
Oh, can I speak?
Sure.
So, my name is Sam. I live at 726 North Morgan Street, and I'm here to say that, not all young people want this climate action stuff. What we want is jobs. We want opportunities. We want it to be a better place for us to start a business, to live, because ultimately, my younger generation, a lot of us, we're looking at the Floridas, we're looking at the Texas, we're looking at Tennessee, because that's the place where it is easiest to make it. We're looking to make it in society. We're not looking for, the city has to be perfectly beautiful or perfectly this way or that way. I mean, there's so many different opinions, yet it seems like, it doesn't seem like it's a bipartisan effort for both sides jumping onto this climate action thing. It seems like it's just from one side. And ultimately, we need to do what's best for our entire community and for us young people, and all of us young people want this climate action plan, and that's it.
Thanks, Sam. Huh? Oh, yes.
May I speak?
Yes.
For 2 minutes? My name is Jan Hyatt, and I live at 596 Chestnut Street, and I'm a homeowner, and I have a tenant in my large house, which helps me to pay for it, and I pay considerable taxes. As we all know, that big houses in Meadville are significantly taxed. And I've been listening. I came to learn tonight to find out what your ideas were, and your ideas, Sam, and what your concerns are. Jim, was it? Lance. And I learned a lot. And I also feel that it doesn't have to be either or. I think that falling into an either or trap is dangerous for us. It's dangerous for our future. Sam, I don't think it has to be the young people who are wanting jobs or the climate plan. I think that the suggestion is that there will be a climate action committee. And there were so many wonderful ideas. If you would be on this committee, and if is your name Jennifer? Jennifer would be on the committee, and Lance would be on the committee, and Sam would be on the committee, and we would pool our resources, and you would be on the committee, and offer your ideas, research in your areas, and listen to one another. Clearly, we are at a place of crisis in our culture. The only people who can do anything about it is us. We're invested in Meadville. I came to live here in 1979 and been paying taxes ever since, and it's the best money I ever spent. I think Meadville is an amazing place to live and a wonderful place to raise children. I want it to be sustainable for the next generation and the generation after that. I think that can happen if we don't get caught up in either ors. I worked at the college for 20 years. I hope that doesn't make me a non-person. I paid city taxes all the while I was doing that. And I paid real estate taxes all the while I was doing that. And I learned a lot while I was there. There's a lot to find out about. None of us has all the answers, but we're trying. And we're doing the best we can. And I think we need to listen to one another. And I would like to know you better. Maybe we could have coffee sometime. What was your name? Karen, yes. Okay, Jan. And I think that that's the way we can begin to make this the community. We all love living in Meadville. Otherwise, we wouldn't be living here. We want the best for it. We want the most for it. We want it for our children. We want them to be able to live here. We want it for our grandchildren. So thank you.
Thank you, Jan. I think that's it. All right.
Did I say I hope you vote for this plan?
Thank you, Jan. Notice of executive session meeting?
Your Honor, an executive session was held on June 7th, 2022 to discuss personnel.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve minutes?
Motion.
Okay. Can I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
McKnight?
Aye.
Myers?
Aye.
Roa?
Aye.
Vogel? Aye. Kinder?
Aye. Communications?
Your Honor, we received several communications. We had 24 in total that were in support of the climate action plan, 3 that recommended some changes to the climate action plan, and one that listed several anonymous comments. I will read who those communications were from. Joe Tompkins, Mark Ames, Teresa Herrera, KT Shorb, Margaret Jiminville, Eric Palant, and I apologize ahead of time if I butchers anybody's name, Amelia Carr, Lisa Whitenack, John DeArmond, Dan Hunter, Cassandra Gonzalez, Ron Mooney, Catherine Volna, Lisbeth Searle White, Lee Scandinaro, Jesri Friend, which is from the Manufacturer and Business Association, Jennifer Hellworth, Josh Searle White, Aubrey Hall, Amelia Finneret, Dan Wonk, Brad Hirsch, Michael D. Colpoys from National Fuel, and then Alicia Moad.
Okay. The discussion motion for communication to council policy. I have a motion to adopt.
So moved.
I also move.
Can I have a second?
I can second it too.
Okay. It's so big, we can manage it. Right. Discussion.
So this is an attempt to clean up and make apparent the communication policy. So the proposed communication policy for council would be as follows. Name and address would be required. Staff will verify that those submitting comment are either city residents or city taxpayers. No communication will be read unless city staff can verify residency or taxpayer status. Surveys will only be read if names and addresses of survey participants are included, and that at the council meeting, only names and topic of communication will be read, not specifics of the letter. This would be posted on the city's Facebook page, website, and anywhere that somebody would look for what the policy is.
Okay. Does anybody have a question? I have. I understand wanting to standardize and wanting a policy for communications. I think it's good for it to be clear. I do feel like looking at this, it looks like onerous, it looks like a lot, it looks like we don't want communications from people, which isn't true. At risk of like slashing a lot, can we put a preface on here or something that says residents and taxpayers are encouraged to communicate with elected officials and city staff at any time through written letters, email, phone calls, and office hours as applicable, but the policy below applies to written communication to enter into the public record at meetings, just so it's like you can reach out to us at any time, but if you want it to be on the public record, this is what you have to follow. Because I don't want people to see this and think that they can't email us or something.
Does that require a move to amend?
If it's like a preface and not part of the policy.
I guess
You
that's
have
the
a motion,
question.
a second, now you're discussing it, right?
Yeah.
But if
So-
it's not part of the policy,
If it's like in the preface, does that mean an amendment?
It doesn't.
I have other things that might be amendments. I do think that there is value in summarizing. I know that we run the risk of when we're selective of what we share and what we don't, but I think that the point of communication to council are to enter things into the public discourse, and I think that just the topic leaves that out. So that's letter C. The last line there, no communication shall be read in their entirety or summarized during the meeting. I would suggest that we just strike that last or summarized during the meeting. And then D, that we asked to select one individual to speak for the group. I imagine that was pulled from our like public comment policy or something, but the speaking is not super clear. And also I would just, I don't know. I would be open to just striking that in its entirety so that folks can submit letters. That would be clause D.
I would have an issue with modifying clause C. And again, I'm relying on past practice.
past practice has been, and I'm going back 40 years on this, so it's nothing new, that the individual is named and identified and the topic is mentioned, but the position on the subject is not mentioned. These are, after all, available for public inspection, so if someone is interested, they can look at the actual letter itself.
Would that require filing a right to know?
In that sense, it could. We can also post this online as part of where we post meeting minutes after they're accepted. We can also post communications to council online. And then that would not require a right to know request.
Jim, you don't want it to be in there what people's stance on things when they're writing the communication?
I don't know that anything is served. I mean, if someone writes a 12-page letter, how are you going to summarize it?
Katie's done it before.
And you certainly don't want to read it in full. And someone's going to say, you didn't say what I wanted you to say. You summarized only what you wanted to cover. So if you just have a policy that says, we're not summarizing, we're not reading the thing. If you're interested, go for it and file a right to know. Or if it's posted online, look at it.
Yeah, I can be swayed. I just think, again, like if the point is for us to kind of hear people's sentiment as we're making decisions, I think it makes sense to hear that. But I guess we get them ahead of time, and that's the point for it to come into us on Fridays anyway.
And there are some specific prohibitions which are good and should be maintained. I don't need to talk about them too much, but no personal attacks or vulgar abusive language. Just things that would be considered in good taste. You have the right to express your opinion on the subject, but you shouldn't be employing argumentum ad hominem.
Right. Yeah, I can agree with that. I guess I have mixed feelings about, I do understand what you mean about the trying to summarize someone else's words, right? Like, because then it has us putting our own spin on it, right? Like, especially if it's like a 12-page. But I do think that if people take the time and want this in public, as public knowledge and put in our minutes, then I think that I don't know what we can say that says, for or against, if it's on an agenda item, right? Like, to be specific, have it in your subject, something like that, so it is in public record. Do you know what I'm saying, Carrie? I'm like asking. Is that like a possibility that we could put that language in here or do something of that nature? Go ahead, Katie.
I would clarify that by virtue of being acknowledged in the meeting, it is in public record.
Yeah.
So as has been stated, that means that there's nothing we can do to restrict access to that document. And even if it's a right to know request, we have 5 business days to fulfill that request. So it's not a long length of time in between the request and receiving the document. So.
And if we post, right, the emails on with our meeting minutes, then I can dig that.
And there's nothing to say that if there's something striking in a letter that council reads when I send the packets out on Friday, that you could not bring that up yourselves as well.
So we could bring it up.
Correct.
Yeah. Just to clarify, I was just like public record and public discourse, like us talking about stuff and deliberating, right? Yeah, is kind of a different thing. And also like the right to know request would, I think the idea of avoiding those if we can is just knowing that they take a lot of time. But if we're putting them out there with minutes, I think that's.
But yeah, if we're going to put them out with minutes, and I agree with Jim, and we can do it that way. Sorry. Does anybody else have any questions or comments on it? No?
And there's no harm, this was intended to be a discussion, right? You're encouraging people to come out in person, first of all, right?
Right.
And then you're trying to balance getting through a meeting where you might have 100 letters that came in. We've never had this kind of volume that I can remember of people wanting to communicate, right? But there's no requirement that you read every letter, right? We just want to be consistent. So if council decides we're actually going to read every letter for sure. But we don't want it to be on staff where we're trying to decide what gets summarized, what gets read,
Right.
So we're just trying to be consistent, but it sounds like it needs more work. So even though there's a motion and a second, you could just vote this one down, and we'll come back with a revised draft rather than try to write it on the fly. If everybody here, right?
Or can we withdraw the motion in a second?
You could.
All right. Who seconded it?
Gretchen technically firsted it and then seconded it, but then she seconded it.
So you first, you
Yeah.
motioned and she seconded.
So you're going to withdraw and she'll withdraw?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll withdraw my motion.
And I'll withdraw my second.
All right, so we're gonna keep working.
We're going to work on
Isn't
that just a
there
little bit longer.
policy, didn't we institute a policy before where if there was a group of people?
That's
For public comment.
But why can't we have the same, instead of reading, if all the letters are for or against, just have one person represent that group, the same thing, instead of making a big deal.
Well, that's kind of what Katie did tonight, right? Like we summarized, and I guess that's just what we have to discuss. But I agree, right? Like if it's good for public comment, then it should be good for communications. So we'll,
Yeah, frankly, I don't know that we enforce it for public comment.
Well, and that's the thing,
how we would enforce
we
it.
haven't, and that's the thing, we came up with it, but we didn't enforce it. So, policy, let's enforce it.
What's our policy? 5 minutes on agenda items at the beginning of the meeting and 3 minutes on non-agenda items at the end.
meeting.
And if you are with a group, we've got
One person
speaking on behalf, but I don't know how that's a hard thing to know, people come and sign up and we don't really have a way to know
Who's with the group?
if they're coordinated and if they're not and what the difference is, so. I think it's tough to stipulate that. To be continued.
Yeah, so that'll be something we.
Is there clear direction from council on what they want to see changed in the policy?
I heard that we are okay, I think the consensus was okay with keeping C as is and including the letters in minutes. And then D, I don't know.
So I heard strike D.
Strike D.
And then make it known somewhere in the policy that council can be reached by residents and whomever at any time, does not have to be. And then as Autumn indicated, put letters to council out with our meeting minutes. I think those are the additions and edits that I heard.
Is that clear, Katie, does that answer?
Yeah.
Maybe modify section C and put all written communications, so there's no question.
Yeah.
About people speaking. Oh, is my head shining?
It is, yeah. Sorry.
All right. So we pulled that off, we'll discuss that at the next meeting. Yeah. We'll be on. Manager's report.
So the very first thing I wanted to share is that July 8th will be Gary Johnson's last day as a Meadville City employee. Gary's hiding in the back there. He's going on to bigger and better things. Gary, do you want to say anything? Nope? Okay. Right. Cool, thanks, Gary. So that brings us to the cleanup day. Cleanup day for Meadville was on May 14th. The city generated $1,483.84. From that, expenses were $6,224.29. That's all I have.
Okay, and that's income before those expenses, right?
Correct.
It's the net. And is the fifth ward called out just because they coordinated?
They coordinated their own effort as part of cleanup day, and they gathered all of their cleanup items and transported them as a one ward to Public Works.
That would be a cool model. We can replicate it.
Do a good job with that. All right, council subcommittee reports, housing and economic development. I don't think we have anything to report.
No.
Community engagement.
Nothing to report. The climate action plan, as we well know at this point, is on the agenda tonight. Depending on how that goes, we'll be able to move our sights on to the other priorities passed to that group, which was non-discrimination and participatory budgeting.
And then, I'm sorry. Finance committee?
Nothing at this point.
Okay. Should we strike that since we don't have one? Well,
We might have some proposals being issued, but they might be more individual, like Gretchen might have some issues, and I know I'm going to have some I'll be introducing, but not right now. We have enough other things on our plate.
Right. Old business?
Your Honor, there's been no changes to the current vacancies. We are going to accept applications through June 30th for those current vacancies. There are 2 vacancies on Market Authority, 1 on Planning and Zoning Commission, and 1 on the Meadville Area Water Authority.
And just for council's knowledge, we will post the end date on the city's website, and we can also do a reminder on the Facebook page that applications are due.
Good idea. Thank you, Marianne. Discussion, resolution, adoption of climate action plan. Can I have a motion? So moved. Second?
Second.
Discussion. Does anyone have any questions?
Your Honor, may I read the resolution?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Meadville, County of Crawford, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, adopting the 2022 Meadville Climate Action Plan. Resolved by the Council of the City of Meadville that whereas the City of Meadville recognizes that climate change is among the most significant problems facing the world today and potentially poses the greatest economic, environmental, and social challenge of the 21st century. Whereas the City of Meadville also recognizes that meaningful action is needed at all levels of government to mitigate and adapt to climate change, protect the public trust, ensure a resilient community, and leave a healthy environment and atmosphere for future generations. The City of Meadville will engage residents, visitors, businesses, and organizations to do the same. Whereas the Climate Action Plan is a accumulation of ideas, goals, and initiatives that will serve as a formal roadmap to maintain progress in the city's commitment to reducing energy and fuel consumption while enhancing economy, quality of life, and community. Whereas the research for drafting of the Climate Action Plan is the result of dedicated work by volunteer residents of the City of Meadville with support and guidance from the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection and ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability. Whereas implementation and/or approval of the specific initiatives included in the Climate Action Plan shall be subject to approval by City Council by further resolution or ordinance. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the City of Meadville hereby adopts the Meadville Climate Action Plan.
All right. Roll call?
I'm sorry, I did not hear the motion in the second.
That was the motion was Autumn and then Larry seconded.
Okay.
You're going to have some discussion there?
Yep, absolutely. Does anybody have any questions or discussion?
I will not be supporting the Climate Action Plan. And for a moment, I'd like to put on a different hat from City Council. I'd like to speak to you for a moment as a licensed real estate broker, a real estate instructor, and a certified real estate appraiser. Meadville does not exist in a vacuum. A few hundred yards away from here is a creek. On the west side of the creek, you have 2 mills of property tax. On this side of the creek, you have 23. On the west side of the creek, there is no fee charged on your cable, if you have cable. On this side of the creek, you have a cable franchise fee. On the west side of the creek, to my knowledge, they do not have a stormwater management fee. On this side of the creek, we have one. All right. All of these items make it more difficult to attract investors to the city. Investors mean jobs. They mean jobs in construction, employment, entrepreneurial profit. Mortgages are made. But if it's too expensive people are not going to be wanting to transact business here. And I've said before, if we were going to have any kind of climate action plan, it should be a regional effort. After all, the city of Meadville has the lowest per capita income, yet we are once again being asked to take the lead. We cannot afford, or our taxpayers cannot afford to take the lead when they're making maybe $1,300 a month on Social Security. Former Councilman Emanuel Bittner talked about the cost of heat. If you had to go and convert to electric, and if the electric had to be done by wind power, and it was on a cold month, I think it was something like $1,300, which is virtually an entire Social Security paycheck. Okay, that's an awful expensive item to be politically correct. Okay. We need to be competitive as a region. These are our neighbors, they're our friends, but they are also competing for investment dollars. And as far as landlords are concerned, you have, by and large, very responsible landlords who are continually fixing up their properties. As I drive through town, I see this all the time. If they decide to disinvest in the community, the chances are that the next set of landlords will not have the financial strength, because these people have been in business for a while and they have more equity in their properties. People who buy it with low equity are going to have higher mortgage payments. With higher mortgage payments, they are not going to be able to invest in the repairs and improvements that might be needed. So your housing stock will decline and or rents will go up. Those are just some basic facts of life. So if we want to convert our people from renters into the homeless people because they can't afford a place, this is a good way to do it. If you want to talk about a regional effort, and I mean truly regional, that's another story, and maybe it should be done on individual initiatives. If you were having a discussion about changing the lights over in the city to LED, I'm on board. That's a smart move. If you wanted to increase the waste stream so you're not throwing out electronic equipment, dry cell batteries, and computers and cell phones, I'm with you on that. Okay, but to have all these aspirations which we cannot possibly implement. We don't have the time, we don't have the manpower, we don't have the funds. Pretty soon you're going to be talking about having an environmental advisory committee. It's going to cost you. There are minutes to be drawn, meetings to be advertised. There will be a cost. And our staff is quite frankly stretched well beyond where they ought to be. And they don't have the ability to handle yet another mandate or initiative at this point in time. So if you have any doubts, I will not be supporting this plan.
Does anybody else have any?
Yeah, at first, I was like Jim, I didn't want to support it. Number one, I didn't know everything. There was questions I had, I wanted to find out. And to be honest, there's some things in this plan that I don't agree with, that I don't feel right now we need to deal with. I think again, my thing is jobs. Now, I've spoken with different people that say some of these programs or ideas can create jobs. Rooftop gardening, things of that nature. And I think that's what we need to do. You put it well. We need to quit saying or separating and let's work together. Let's see what from this packet and see what's going to work for Meadville, instead of saying, no, I'm against the energy program. I'm not against it, but I want to make darn sure that, first of all, our city is not going to be taxed, and there's grants and things available. Now we're going to go into who's going to apply for these grants. Well, we have enough people, smart, intelligent people in this area that do that work. And if you're really concerned, step up. But if you just want to fuss and don't want to have it because you don't agree with it or it's against, then you're defeating the purpose. But I'm going to support it because I feel that we need the overall umbrella. We need to start looking at climate control. And again, do I agree with everything? No. One of the things, renter program, I don't see what that has to do with climate control, but it's in there. So that's what we need to do. We need to go back through and look at what is applicable to this area, what's going to work, what's going to be beneficial, instead of just saying no, or just instead of saying yes. We need to come together and really look at what is going to be beneficial for us.
I'm of a similar mindset to Larry as well. I think for me, it is like how we can work together to answer the question of how we can care for our resources, and that's economy and people who are here and hear everyone's voices. I've learned so much from the letters, from everyone's talking today. I really appreciate all of the input. And I agree with Jan, I don't think it's an either or. I think it's really working together to open up and really conserve a space for that, to understand the frustrations. But it's like an opening of a conversation. I do know in the EAC, the language is beautiful. It says to work cooperatively with public, private, commercial, and industrial entities. It doesn't say to mandate, it doesn't say to bulldoze, it doesn't say to brainwash. It's to work collaboratively. It really needs to be 100% just really good discussions are tough, and I think that's why we're here tonight, is to really look at this and move forward, and to ask the big whys, because those are really important. And we're community, and I hope we can work this together.
I agree, right? And I think that's why the climate action plan is a beautiful thing, because we're not voting on any specific thing. We're voting on a plan and an initiative and an idea, right? That the AC has to go. They have to look at, and we have to form them with people that are here, that are in our community, right? And anybody can be on that. And with their ideas and their input, then they come back to us with those ideas. And that's when we decide if we're going to implement or not. And that's when the public comes back in every single issue. So I agree with you. I think that that's what happens, and that's why the climate action plan is a beautiful thing. Anyone else have anything to say?
I will just say I'm in support of the plan, even though it's not my plan, and even though it isn't perfect, because it doesn't do things like address China. Ron doesn't do that. But it does a lot here, which is the only place that we can control. And it's the only place that's kind of within our purview. I want to thank again for the 100th time the volunteers who've worked really hard on the plan. And I want to also underscore Jan's invitation. So I think Jan was spot on, right? The plan is a plan, it's a set of goals. And each thing in the plan is an initiative. It's a different policy that the Environmental Advisory Council is going to have to think about. How do we go about this? Where do we get the money? How do we tap into the $17 billion that are coming from the federal government for climate initiatives that we reviewed in our infrastructure meeting a couple weeks ago? And as Jan said, that committee is made up of people in this community. All of your concerns, I think, the minutes that we have from this meeting, all of the letters that we've got from all of you, are great source material for people who are going to be on that Environmental Advisory Council to know what issues we need to be thinking about, what considerations we need to make, and to go a step further, I hope that you apply. I really do. And that'll go through the same process, and hopefully that'll come up soon. But I do thank you all for being here today. And yeah, we can do this.
All right, roll call.
McKnight?
Aye.
Myers?
Aye.
Roa?
No.
Vogel?
Aye.
Kinder?
Aye. New business.
So the first item, Your Honor, is the discussion of the city's electric procurement. I'm going to turn this over to City Finance Director Tim Groves.
So Gary Svets from Svets Consulting has been doing the electric procurement for the city of Meadville for quite a few number of years. And he had alerted me about a month ago that we should be looking at purchasing electric prior to the end of our contract, which will be in October or November. So I told him to put together something to present to council because it's a gamble whether we buy it now or do we wait it out till October, November and see if the prices come down. He's been in the business long enough, I thought at least he would give you his comments and maybe I could get some of your views on it. So Gary Svets.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. I'll try to keep my presentation will be short because I got brisket and pulled pork wing. Oh. But at the same time, is that good? I'll invite you. So I wrote a little summary here just so we can follow along, and I know you're savvy in energy, but at the same time, there's so many variables in our environment right now. I don't do just fossil fuels. I'm involved in alternative energy projects and things like that, so I don't want to go around. But anyway, we are currently in a 44-month contract. It ends at the end towards the end of this year. And previously, most of our energy markets in electric and natural gas were all-time low, so we took advantage of that as far out as we could. We saved, a little over $40,000. But I wanted to break down how electric's used in the city. And so we have about 36 what I call standard accounts. Those would be your facility usage accounts, roughly about 802,000 kilowatt hours. And then what I did when I came in is broke apart your lighting accounts because that's a significant part of your usage. And we get a better price for that because there's not a capacity use. So the current pricing comparison, we were a little bit like 5.3 cents and lighting accounts are 3.9. But as you can see, what I did is I termed out by year going out because we play the futures market, 12, 24, 36, 48, and 60 months. And I associated the current pricing that we're receiving, in fact, this morning. And so I wanted to share with you in those 36 accounts, there's quite a difference, obviously, in pricing structure. 60 months being the best, but being 5 years, I didn't want to make that decision totally on my own, to be honest with you. And then the lighting accounts are a little less, but still significant increases. So I did a scenario of example of what that meant in dollars. And so I took the standard and the lighting accounts, and we see that the standard accounts would be an increase of $36,000 just based on current pricing, based on if we went out 5 years. It would be more if we decided to go less years, obviously. And then the same thing as in lighting would be over $19,000. So that the net cost impact would be about a little over $55,000, which is, it's a significant increase. So I looked at, in my third page, you can see all the variables we're dealing with. And unfortunately, none of them are positive, no matter where you are politically, where you are in what your knowledge of energy is. There are just so many things going on in our world. And, between the war, refinery capacity in oil, obviously more exports to Europe and Asia. One significant thing in most of our production rate increase in natural gas has caused a kind of an economic imbalance where right now natural gas is at 7 to 9 decatherms on the market, but companies can get 25 to 30 decatherms when they ship it out. Now now that plant is down, just occurred this week, that converts that LNG, so now it has to be used domestically. But then we have production rig people saying, okay, I might cap it. So there's a lot of variables and balances, but I just don't like the future, at least for the 18 months to 24 months for various reasons. And there's other issues about generation plants being offline, and someone mentioned about electric power grid, which has always been kind of suspect. Well, this summer is really going to be a real test, that's all I can tell you. So nothing has been positive. Everything's uphill, So this is why I brought it to council, chatted with them, and said, here's some thoughts, here's some real numbers. What do what's your input to this as far as how far to go out, just in case there's any other initiatives. And then a couple things I can do is I can review current standard accounts and see if there's more lighting accounts in that mix, because I can get a better price. The lighting accounts might be a good opportunity to lock in now. The standard accounts maybe to wait. But that's a discussion. So that's why I wanted to bring you the best information I could, most timely, and have you have any questions or conversation about that. So that's kind of my summary. We bought natural gas 3 years out because it was a pretty good price before things then. So I think the previous contract, which ends at the end of this year, was at $290 something a decatherm, and I bought it at $375. So that was a pretty attractive competitive price. If I go out in the market today, if I didn't do that 3 months ago, it'd be like $575. $2 more decatherm. So we're just seeing such an escalation of energy costs.
Is there a contract breakage fee if rates would plummet after we sign an agreement?
In electric, it's a more fixed. In gas, sometimes I can extend the contract and average out a price. But in electric, it's a lot difficult. It's more difficult to do that. Well, there's several different techniques I've used. Like if I had a business that went down, okay, sometimes if I have a good price, I can sell it back in the market and kind of zero it out. But I don't know where this price will stand 2 years or 3 years down the road, to be honest with you.
Thanks.
Current Penelec rate price is 11 cents on June 1st.
We just wanted to get your feeling. It's a crapshoot, there's no doubt.
There's some risk.
And so Gary's recommending maybe on a 12 to 24 for the standard and go out longer on the light.
Standard, we have some time to wait to see if some market correction would occur. It just, right now, we're about 16% below our current gas inventory, and if you see, natural gas is being used for electric generation about 38%. So it has weighs a big impact on your electric prices.
So if you were to recommend to council, what would you recommend right now to do? I mean, you've got to make a recommendation one way or another.
Yeah, darn.
I know. That's what you get paid for.
Yeah, I know that. So basically, the lighting accounts, which is at 6.9 and 60 months, seems like a reasonable price for whatever is going on right now. I might be able to shift a few more accounts into that pricing group, so less standard accounts, and so I can review that. The standard one is really a tough one because it's so high, what I consider high, at 9.8. I have done 5 years at 8 cents, 9.8 to 10 cents. It's like, I'm not sure we want to take that pricing risk for 5 years. If you ask me what the current environment might be, I'm looking at 18 to 24 months. Even though it's a higher price, you're not stuck at that level for too long. So that's kind of where I would be at, 24 to 36.
And that's your recommendation with the standard? And can you like totally back up? Like,
Yeah.
what falls under the standard? Like you said, we've got 36 standard accounts and 4 lighting accounts.
Yeah,
Like, what
36
kind
would
of
be
usage?
like your buildings, like this
Okay.
building here, or your city building, or non-light service accounts. So most of them are going to be facilities. This does not include your authorities or a DEP facility.
And then is lighting like street lighting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're one city that has a lot of lights. Okay,
We
that's all I
are
can
one
tell.
city that has one?
Yeah, I do several cities. You have a lot of lights. I mean, and if, breaking apart makes sense for you, that's what I do, so.
Are we required to use Penelec? Don't they technically own our covert headed lights?
This is not the street lights. These would be the street lights that we own and we power ourselves. Yeah.
City
Those are like
Yeah,
the
not
black
the
poles and
not the
the
125,000 we pay
ornate-
Penelec for their
Right,
street
okay.
lights.
And those have all been converted, right? So they're like drawing at the least amount of.
The
city
city-owned ones, yes,
streetlights,
but
yeah.
not the Penelec-owned ones.
And that's a different program.
Yeah, it's a different story there.
But just to say, like, the calculated usage is already factored in.
So I probably was kind of on Gary's side that the 12 to 24 is probably the best option for right now. The 5-year one for the streetlights, I would probably totally agree with also. It's just difficult. If it goes way up, we'll look like we made a big mistake and we should have done 5 years. But it's just very difficult to go 5 years on those higher rates that you hope something can happen by then.
So I mean, like, the standard rate of 10.3 looks like a good deal, 36 months, to be honest with
And that's, I'm sorry.
you. Go ahead.
But on the second page, the
That's the light.
example where you
Oh, okay.
calculated out the difference, that's at that.
Yeah,
those are
I
both
have
at the
everything at
5
5 years in the
Okay.
example. So
So-
that would adjust that dollar amount.
To more, right? It's costing it, yeah. Be a larger increase.
But I wanted to get with you sooner than later. So, like, the fall could be interesting in a lot of ways.
I don't understand this one, statement review accounts, to see if we can identify more lighting accounts.
Yeah, when I first came in, the way Penelec bills, sometimes you can't identify lighting accounts as well. So there might be an opportunity for me to relook at all those 36 accounts and just make sure they're in the right category.
Okay.
So if I'm trying to look at all the different ways I can save you some more money, I guess, and reduce that impact.
Are the prices based on a certain threshold of use? In other words, if we contract based on an expected use and our use ends up being cut in half?
It's full usage, so whether it lowers or raises, that's the same price.
Okay.
So in our contractual arrangements, we make sure we cover all bases. Both in gas, I have 100% swing in gas, and I also have full requirements in the electric contracts.
I'm
So
sorry,
if you do better efficiency, that's good.
Can you repeat that? You said it's full usage?
Full requirement. That's what the terminology is. That means, say a building, like your DEP building used a lot less one year. They put in different controls. There was no issue. So less usage maintained the same pricing.
We're maintaining the same price, we're paying the same, whether we use less or we use more.
Yeah. That's the safety.
Seems insane.
Well,
You mean
welcome
the
to
same
the energy
rate,
world.
not the
Welcome
same
to the energy
rate.
world.
The same rate, not the same
Yeah.
flat.
Same rate.
Same flat, okay.
Yeah, so
okay.
the same
Make-
price per
yeah,
kilowatt
makes
hour.
sense. Got
Okay?
it, okay.
So I'm trying to reduce all
Cumulative,
risk
sure.
in all these contracts. Try to cover all bases as much as possible.
Well, I believe that you know what you're doing, so I.
Well, thank you.
I would.
Yeah, just show up.
You got one person on
I
your side.
believe that.
We're trying our best.
I'm just trying to
We're just,
understand.
it's a different,
There's a lot of- Yeah,
it's a
I
different
know.
world, difficult time.
Right.
I think we'll get through it, but it's gonna take a while, and unfortunately, people are gonna pay a lot higher prices than they understand.
Right.
And unfortunately, on the residential side too.
So I think generally what we've done before is, I think we've done a resolution that authorizes Gary to basically go to the market when he feels the best before October, November.
Yeah.
Because there could be a day that's great and he wants to do it, he can't wait for a council meeting, and then by that time, the price may have changed again. So
Right.
generally how we do it, you give him some guidelines on whether you want 24, 36, and things of that nature.
Makes sense for me.
Okay.
And then he'll make good, if 36 is way out of line, he'll go back to 24.
Yeah, and I wanted to make sure we had this discussion, so I feel comfortable representing you and best we can do this together, because I've had many discussions with customers.
So this is Gary Lizio. I'm not sure how the resolution would read, but kind of authorizing Gary.
Do you want to do it tonight, Tim, or do you want to?
I think we kind of want it within the next, pretty soon.
Yeah, I think more time the better for me, the earlier the better, because there's some things going on in the market that I think we could see a couple of small opportunities, not big, but just.
Could it wait till July 6th?
energy markets don't wait. Every day is a different day, a different situation, so.
It's just kind of an authorization that he can go up to 36 months on the standard, he can go up to, 5 years on the other, and the rates would be within what he says here. If the rates go higher, then he's gonna come back to council and talk about it.
Do you want to, just because you understand the numbers better, do you want to articulate what the range is on the?
So the range for what we'll call the standard accounts would be up to 36 months. And currently, the guess is 10.3.
Right.
But we've got to give him some latitude, because if all of a sudden things start going up, we can't come back to you because they'll keep going up. So you got to give him a little latitude. I don't know if a 10 or 15% swing is enough.
Yeah, that's
This is
fine.
very difficult. It's, you've got to trust them.
Yeah, I'm usually all my contracts are giving me authority to purchase on your behalf. But we are in a different world situation here where, costs are going up. That's why I'm here. Usually we work together and I authorize and get
When we
contracts.
should buy or not. Yeah. He was just asking about your current contract.
Yeah.
But it doesn't go into detail about when you're supposed to buy or not.
No.
You just act on our behalf.
Yeah, so the last contract was almost 4 years because it made all the sense in the world. We were buying at a very low rate, and I knew, based on my background and experience, that this was a good time to do that. Now, we're in a different situation.
So I guess if we could get those parameters and you feel comfortable with it, and we've done it almost like with the bond market. He can notify me, I notify the finance committee usually, and then they agree or not agree, and that's kind of how we get somewhat of approval from council to go ahead and lock it in.
So when I buy, the contract gets set, and I have a couple days to get it signed by a representative.
So we can use that same theory if that works for everybody.
So then we need a motion?
So you would need
some kind of,
you would need a motion to amend the agenda to add the resolution, and then you would have to make a motion on the resolution.
but don't we need to know what the resolution is? Like, I don't know that we have that. I was hearing, so I heard maybe from your recommendations, Gary, that 12 or 24 months on the standard are probably the best. Then I heard, Tim, you mentioned the 36.
So I would say maybe up to 36 months for the standard.
Up to 36
The resolution up to 36 months for standard accounts, and up to 60 months on the lighting accounts. If you give me that variance, then I think we can work something out best.
With, Tim had also mentioned like some swing room, like in terms of the.
Well, I found like the bond method, the same thing. He would contact me and say, Tim, looks good today, it's gonna be 6.9. I would contact the finance committee and get them basically to approve it, talk to Mary Ann, and then we would authorize Gary to go and do it.
But do you need to know as much today as like 60 months on lighting, but like not to exceed 7 point?
Well, if he told me that, and I went to the finance committee, they might say, nope, we're not doing it. We're going back to council and talk about it, and it ends right there, and we start all over again.
Yeah, that's a difficult process to start all over again in the energy markets. Because when I pull the trigger, it's like,
Yeah. And
we're
if
ready to go.
if we give the authorization, can you still review the accounts?
Yeah,
To see if-
I'll do that, actually, I'll do that before. I'm just trying to throw a couple things out that might help the situation. I
Thank you.
can't commit, I can just say that I'll go through all the different accounts and just make sure they're in the right category.
In case anybody's wondering, wind power is about 2 cents a kilowatt more than natural gas.
Yeah, now there's a premium for green. But, no, whatever clients want, environmentally, power-wise, I always adjust.
It just kind of came on quick because we were going to wait till October, November when it normally would go through the process. But things are changing rapidly, and so we wanted to get in front of it at least.
And this wouldn't take effect until our current contract is done?
That's true.
Correct.
So this would be starting at probably in November 22, and whatever term we decide. So you're still going to maintain a really good price through November. It's just trying to work the next stage.
Do a bunch of energy efficiency measures.
Well, this will
Until-
make all conservation projects a better return on investment for various reasons.
Great.
Coats, my coats.
What do you think?
So, you know, smart purchasing and good practices and implementing any energy efficiency costs, which, you know, I'll be glad to share our thoughts here.
Great.
Okay, let me see what Gary,
Sure,
what you're thinking.
so just a couple, in order to act on it, right, we need to amend the agenda, because it was on for discussion and not for a motion, right? So we would amend the agenda to put that motion on, right? We can pass that and due to the escalating energy costs and the fickle market, you know, that's warranted if you find that we should do that. So to give him authorization to act on this sometime before we meet again in a couple weeks. You could wait 2 weeks. If we are gonna do that, let's move, if we are gonna go with the former option, let's make that motion, and then we just need to take a second to write down what that motion is, just what the parameters are that you're authorizing him to negotiate with him, right? And make that part of the motion, since it is gonna be a contract that binds the city.
Right.
So we can do it either way.
Thoughts?
So do you need, we need a motion?
We need a motion to amend the
To amend the
agenda, and to
agenda.
add
So
a
moved.
motion to.
I second.
Yeah, okay. So, go ahead, Kim, sorry.
So, but we also need to take a minute to determine what that resolution looks like, because we have nothing drafted, we have no language prepared for council tonight. And this would, if we're talking about a 5-year contract, I mean, that
Right.
locks you in for 5 years.
Tim, what did we do with the, before, when we made a decision and then we did the resolution? Like, it was with the bonds, right? Like, or something of that
Yeah,
nature.
that- it's similar
we did
to
it
the
in a
same
little-
thing, yeah.
A little bit different.
We
It-
read the resolution and it gave the same parameters as we want to tonight. It's just that, I guess we wanted to move a little quicker, because I asked him if we could wait till July, and you
Now,
don't
my
know what's
firm-
gonna happen in a week. If he sees something
Say
going on.
one step maybe, I'm not sure about policy, you know that better than I do, but my contract is stated I'm unauthorized to purchase on your behalf. What I would say, focus on the parameters you're gonna give me.
Okay, so that's already in your contract?
Yeah.
That you have that authorization?
Just so I'm clear, what is the recommendation on the two categories?
Up to 36 months on the standard, anywhere between 12 and 36.
It's just electric.
Yeah, and then the lighting accounts, which we broke out to accounts, is up to 60 months.
So up to how long on the
60 months, I mean, 36 on the standard, and lighting is 60 months.
I have the last resolution.
That'd be great.
It's 80. These are on stuff.
So this, she's so good at taking the lead. She might have done that before.
Gary, you've been watching this, and in the last month, do you know how much it has shifted?
It's
That
always
makes
been
us
shifted.
worry, right?
Yeah.
Like, that we
It
need to
shifted
do it
up,
right this
like,
second.
Okay, between May and June, similar dates. I think, like the standard account went
After we
from
bought it, we ratified it.
6.981
This is
to
just
9.8.
That's how they want to go.
And then the lighting went from 5.9 to 6.9, which is kind, if you can read through that, it's on
Right.
there. So,
So our next council meeting is in 3 weeks.
Right,
So
so it
that's
could
a
go
long
up.
time. Like, that's like the
So
same.
your, so your contract, the piece that I didn't know before, is your contract, which I don't have in front of me. I thought it did authorize you to
yes,
negotiate
it does.
and bind the city.
Yes,
So really, you just need a consensus of council of the range that they're comfortable with.
the perimeter.
And then they can ratify afterwards, which is what we did in 2015.
That's what I was asking, that we did.
Yeah.
Do it with the nod of finance.
So that's the third option, which is fine, right? Which is the way we've done bond issuances. Like
Yeah, I was just telling Mary Ann, I thought that's what we're gonna do, just get your general.
And that's why I was
So
asking
where we're
if
going.
that's what we.
If you have a
okay.
consensus of the range, whether it's the 36, up to 36 months for the standard electric and up to 60 months for the lighting, he is already authorized to bind the city, and then we'll bring it back to specific rates and we'll ratify the contract.
Okay.
That's the easiest way. Now, we don't have to amend the agenda, it's just a consensus guidance for your contracted professional just to continue to act on your behalf.
So
Do Do you have a
We
consensus?
still amend the agenda?
No.
No,
Okay.
no, we're just giving a
We have to rescind that
consensus.
motion?
Yeah, here we go again. Yeah.
So
Giving us
just kind of
rules.
what your consensus, do you like what he's presenting? And if you are, then that gives him the right to,
Yeah, I
and
just
then
need
you'll.
your support to move
I
it.
don't
you'll-
like it, but it feels like, well.
I don't either.
feels right.
I really didn't want to be here, but yeah. Nothing personal, but yeah, it's not like a great message, but it's real, so.
Right. I guess I'm in agreement, right, to the, 24 to 36 months and the 60.
Okay.
At those
Up
rates,
to-
right?
At those rates, yeah. If-
So 24 to 36 for standard and 60 months for the lighting.
Up
Yeah,
to.
Up to.
Up to.
Up to 36 and up to 60.
Yeah, that's the best
Yeah,
option.
that covers
It
it.
just gives him a range.
Sure.
With transferring as many accounts as possible
They're all.
to the cheaper
I
option.
shouldn't have put that in, no, I'm just kidding. No, I will do my best. No, I just was trying to come up with a few things that,
Hope he did his best 4 years ago when we did this.
yeah, we did pretty good, I thought we did. Based on previous, so. I just wish it was a different world, like we all do.
And you've handled a couple contracts. I know 2015, but didn't you handle the prior one, or I can't remember, Gary?
When you say prior, no, I came on 4 years ago.
Okay,
I have a 5-year service contract.
okay.
You said that energy efficiency stuff is part of what you do. Is that part of what you do with our contract?
Well,
Is that
this is what I do.
special?
I do walkthroughs for clients sometimes, or if you have more involvement, you know, I put a proposal together, like an energy audit recommendation project. So, but, you know, I usually, times like this, I'm willing to take a walkthrough of it, if that's a benefit to you.
Gary also does the DEP building, he does a rec authority, so he does quite a few city functions
Yeah.
already.
City of Franklin, authorities, Coca-Cola.
You do the water authority too, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Wish it was a little shorter for you.
Right.
It's better you understand.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Where was that 5-minute timer anyhow?
I didn't talk that Are we good?
He was, yes, I
Okay.
think.
Enjoy your brisket.
Okay. So, yeah, I will.
Do we need a motion? Or we need a
No,
motion?
There was no.
Just a consensus of
Just a
council.
consensus.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine.
Thanks, Gary.
You're welcome.
Okay, discussion, memorandum of understanding for safety and security, City of Meadville and Allegheny College.
I'll turn this over to Gary Elizio to discuss.
Sure, this document just includes, it's an update to a November 2016 agreement that we've had with Allegheny since then. There are no dramatic changes in this. This is something that our chief, Mike Taunton, worked with the Director of Public Safety, Jim Basinger. It incorporates some new Title IX language, which should be included in an agreement like this. It just further clarifies our respective roles between Meadville City Police Department and Allegheny's Police Department. Mike Taunton's good with everything.
And this is just discussion, correct?
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions on this?
Gary, you're satisfied that all issues of hold harmless and liability and indemnification are being met? Thanks.
And you said that there are no significant changes from November 16th, like including what's being asked of our police?
Correct.
Do we have any sense of the kind of volume of work that?
We can get those details. I would not know those off the top of my head. But I can get those if council wishes.
So I'm going to ask, so what are we, the city, getting out of this agreement from Allegheny College?
Allegheny College handles what I would call smaller offenses on their own, which relieves our police department from having to respond to, minor drug offenses, theft offenses, things like that. Our police department has said, hey, we want to be We want to be the lead police force as far as misdemeanor ones, which are the highest level misdemeanors, felonies, assaults, sex offenses, domestic violence. So this clarifies that even though Allegheny College and on their property, they have their own police force, that we're still the lead agency, which is very important to Meadville City Police Department in controlling those investigations, and it clarifies the role. So Allegheny does some, we do ours, and it clarifies who has the lead on different types of crimes.
So they could not assert jurisdiction in something that they've already agreed with our province.
But they could, right, like they're commissioned police officers. They've got the powers of a police officer in the Commonwealth, so they could do that. It's an agreement that we're striking. This is the agreement.
That's why it's cooperative, that we
Yeah.
don't have different police forces, right, dealing with situations differently, right?
Can you talk about why our police department wants this role, wants to be the lead?
I think a lot of it comes down to the training, honestly, of Allegheny police officers. They're not anything against them, but they go through a different skill set of training than the Meadville City police officers. And again, it comes down to jurisdiction, and this is the city of Meadville, this is not the city of Allegheny. So it should be the city of Meadville police officers doing this job and patrolling. The Allegheny police officers can do the small petty drug offenses, public drunkenness on campus, things like that. But it's really not best practice to have two police departments operating in the same jurisdiction.
Yeah. So like the question, like what I'm talking around basically is like, I have no problem like with this agreement, but like Allegheny brings a lot of people here, and that's why I asked the question about like volume, because like if they're not paying taxes for our police department, and so like what is the pilot, does the pilot reflect increased asks of our police department, like what they pay in lieu of taxes? And that's what I'm getting.
We can have that discussion. It's a little bit separate from this in some capacity, because it's a deeper discussion with Allegheny than just what this MOU reflects.
But ultimately, we want the Meadville City Police Chief to be in charge of Meadville City, right? Like, and that's why we want him to be the one that did this, right? Yeah, which includes Allegheny, right? Like, so we want him to be taking the lead, we want him to be in charge, we've got guys with guns, right? Like, we want to make sure that he is in charge and knows everything about it, because he is our police chief, right? Like, so that's what I know what you mean, but again, we just want to make sure that Totten, who is here to do that job, is the one doing the job.
And we can get the numbers on how often the Meadville City is up at the college. As far as the financial kind of compensation and things, again, I think that's a different, possibly, discussion.
Even just like accountability and, having that just kind of, that would be good too also. Like knowing what's actually going on. That would be good to have that on a couple of fronts. Because I did read through the Title IX, and it sounds like Allegheny has a lot to lose if they don't, like their accreditation, if they don't follow through with, that Title IX aspect, so.
That's correct. So they have their own criminal police force, but they also have Title IX civil responsibilities to conduct their own investigations of certain types of offenses. And what, in large respects, this does in that section is to say that Meadville City Police Department gets to interview people first, control the investigation. So if there's an alleged rape on campus and someone's complaining to the police department, that we're going to control that investigation, to use a specific example.
And I think that's the best place to do it, right?
Right, and both parties want that.
Agreed, right.
Yes, that from the criminal aspect, Meadville City is going to conduct their investigation. Allegheny will hold off for a reasonable time period to complete their Title IX investigation, which they're required to do, and then we're going to work together, but that Meadville City controls it. If either party doesn't like how it's playing out, or there are other aspects to the relationship, either side can terminate in 60 days.
This is discussion tonight.
Yes.
Anybody else have anything else?
So Meadville City Police would still be responsible for transportation, to say if there's someone that needs to be either transported to Sagertown or to the hospital, our police department's still going to be responsible for that, am I correct?
I think we generally do that.
Yep.
Why? I mean, if they are so great to have all this, they have the automobiles that they can do that. I just kind of like you're duplicating services, or what are they there if we're going to be transporting and yeah, I want to know why. I mean, I don't understand. It's kind of like either they're going to do it or we're going to do it. You know, I don't understand why we would. I have a problem them basically getting services, and our patrols up there. If they're transporting somebody from Allegheny College, they get hurt. You know, sure they're going to have their insurance and all that, but it's just, to me, it's more than that. You know, I feel that, you know, if they're going to police their own area, then let them police it. And if it's something bad enough that warrants them to back it up and fine. But if we're going to go up there, if we're going to pick up people, take them to Crawford County Jail or the hospital, you know, get paid for it.
It sounds like,
Well,
when you
that
read,
means-
sorry, it's gonna sound like it, that it says, nonviolent behavior related to summary violations, public safety will call upon state constables, not Meadville City Police. But if they're violent, it goes on, in cases of immediate threat, then they would, because they don't have the training, right? So that's my understanding, so I don't know, it makes sense to me, I guess, there.
When you say they don't have the training, they are Act 120 certified, and a number of them are retired state troopers. They certainly have the training.
So, that's something to look into then, yeah, I was just,
So since this is discussion, these are all things that, you know, we can look into, especially the financial aspect of it, right?
Both.
Go ahead.
Not to-
No.
Just one last part. So both Chief Totten had offered to be here, and then Jim Basinger from Allegheny, and they would be better able to answer those questions about transport and how those get here. I just don't know the answers to that.
Right.
But maybe we have them back to answer those questions. I also knew that the agenda was going to be long in front of them tonight,
Right.
so I didn't know how deep we'd want to get into this.
Well, yeah, and if they are the ones that made this, right, like that looked at it, that thought this was the best cooperative contract between the two, right? And it, again, as long as the city of Meadville, which Allegheny is inside of, is, you know, in control of those investigations that are, you know, rape and different things, right? Like, we want our trusted police officers to be taking care of that. But I think that having them here, maybe at the next meeting, if the next time we discuss, would probably be the next meeting, that we can then ask them questions, the questions that people here wouldn't know offhand. I think that would be our best way to go.
I agree with that.
I agree. And I think if we could also maybe start to make some strides in having that larger conversation with Allegheny, because I think is what's happening, I feel it happening with me, right, is I don't have issue with the content here, right, but like the principle, right, of you know, the situation, right? Not paying taxes, we've got to foot the bill, right, but that is a bigger conversation, and so like if we can know that we're like working on, that those conversations can be happening, and then maybe we're not conflating, that I feel like I'm doing that, conflating necessarily like this agreement. If that does make sense.
Agreed. And I think that's something that we've discussed, or should discuss with any time we're supporting and you know, doing other places, right? Like, we need to know where we're going and how they're compensating our city, right, for the help. So I think that, again, our first step would be having those two come to the next meeting and answer any questions that we have. there anything else on that subject? Okay. Discussion environmental advisory committee, or council, sorry.
So in your packets, you will see a cleaned up version that council generally gave a consensus on at the last meeting with redline edits from comments from council. So this involves suggestion of changing council to committee, adding property owners or taxpayers to be able to be on the EAC. Some cleanup with clarifying if you're continuing to use the word council, is that city council, is that the EAC? So we've indicated city in some areas here, as well as EAC where those are specified. Also, instead of direction, we said with the approval of city council was a suggestion to be made. So this is where that ordinance stands at this moment.
I think it looks good. I think it looks good. Did we, so, an environmental advisory committee is what we established. Is that what is that what you had said? Maybe I heard you differently.
I might tweak that in the final version. I think the consensus was to refer to it as an EA, Environmental Advisory Committee, because there's uncomfortableness with the word council, and I tend to agree with that. If I might, in the ordinance, call it council to be known in the city of Meadville as the Environmental Advisory Committee, just so we use the technical term of the state law, but for our purposes, it's a committee, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sounds good.
And that's really just to make sure we qualify for state funding.
Right.
But it sounds like no one wants to refer to them as a council, so they're a committee, and that'll be their name.
And the plan would be to vote on a finalized version to bring for a vote at the July 6th meeting?
I think we can do that, yeah.
You guys have any thought on that, voting on this at the July 6th meeting?
No, it's fine.
I think that's reasonable.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry.
No. I heard you.
I know you heard me breathe, which indicated on my heart. Would at that meeting, would we set the parameters for like when applications would open and when they would close, or would it be immediate? I don't, how would we think about that?
We can discuss it then. I think there's some other fluctuations we have to take into consideration.
Okay, fluctuations and considerations. Thank you.
Okay, resolution. This is for the authorization for disposition of municipal records. Can I have a motion?
So,
Your Honor, can I read the resolution?
You want to read it first? Okay.
Yes, please. A resolution of the Council of the City of Meadville authorizing disposition of municipal records. Resolved by the Council of the City of Meadville that whereas by virtue of Resolution Number 47 adopted August 24th, 2004, the city has declared its intent to follow the schedule and procedures for the disposition of records as set forth in the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission's Municipal Record Manual approved December 16th, 2008 and last amended on March 28th, 2019. And whereas in accordance with Act 428 of 1968, each individual act of disposition shall be approved by resolution of the governing body of the municipality. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the City of Meadville, Crawford County, Pennsylvania, in accordance with the above cited Municipal Records Manual, hereby authorizes the disposition of the attached public records.
So moved.
second.
Discussion?
There's a company that says we contract. What's their role in this?
So this is the state issues timelines for specific records of when we can destroy them. Most are at a 7-year cycle. This would be basic financial records, payroll records, things that there's no need to keep for longevity. We do contract with Iron Mountain to come in and do periodic cleaning or shredding of these documents. Usually we do this on an annual basis. It's been a little backed up because of the situation with COVID. So we're essentially destroying 2 years and in some cases 3 years worth of records. So they are already contacted to come in and conduct that shredding for us.
Any other questions? No? All right, go ahead. No?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Roll call. McKnight.
Aye.
Myers.
Aye.
Roa.
Aye.
Vogel.
Aye.
Kinder.
Aye. Resolution authorized signatures, janitorial service.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Meadville authorizing signatures on a janitorial services agreement between the City of Meadville and Annie's Flooring and Commercial Services LLC.
Can I have a motion?
Motion?
Second.
Discussion?
So the city is attempting to change its janitorial services. We did ask for bids for this. Annie's came back about $4,500 less per year than the second lowest bidder. You should have those bids
On the last page.
on the last page in your packet, so you can see what the other bids came in as.
Andy's flooring in the city?
Alden?
Alden Extension?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Burnett?
Westmead.
Westmead, but there, yeah.
I think the owner lives in the city.
Yeah.
They do the contract with DEP, and that's where we got the lead on using them, and they're also cleared for doing the police station and the magistrate's office.
Anybody have any other questions?
Just an idle question. Who provides MSDS's?
That's what?
Material
Safety data.
safety data sheets
For their products.
for products. Technically, we're supposed to do them even for toner for your copiers.
I believe the cleaning company asks us to order specific products, so they maintain
Okay.
the sheets.
Any other questions? Okay, roll call.
McKnight.
Aye.
Myers.
Aye.
Roa.
Aye.
Vogel. Kinder.
Aye. Resolution authorized signatures, temporary outdoor license agreement, City of Meadville, and, the neighborhood center.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Meadville authorizing signatures on a temporary outdoor license agreement between the City of Meadville and Meadville Neighborhood Center.
Motion?
Second?
Discussion?
This is the same agreement that council passed for the Meadville Neighborhood Center at the April 21st meeting. Originally, the dates were less than what they actually need, so this extends this from May 15th to July 31st.
Does anybody have any questions?
Just liability. Gary, any problems?
They provide us with a certificate of liability insurance.
We're named. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
We provided that.
Yeah.
Any other questions or roll call?
McKnight.
Aye.
Myers.
Aye.
Roa.
Aye.
Vogel.
Aye.
Kinder.
Aye. Resolution award bids and authorization of signatures.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Meadville awarding the bid in the amount of $55,400 to Lindy Paving for construction of straight concrete curb and driveway aprons on Chestnut Street as part of the city's capital paving program. Resolved by the Council of the City of Meadville that whereas bids for construction of straight concrete curb and driveway aprons on Chestnut Street were opened by City Clerk on May 26, 2022, and whereas Public Works Support Coordinator Jeannie Smith reviewed the bids and per the bid recommendation letter recommends the city award the project to Lindy Paving, Now therefore be it resolved, the City of Meadville by and through the Council of the City of Meadville hereby awards the bid for construction of straight concrete curb and driveway aprons on Chestnut Street to Lindy Paving in the amount of $55,400. Be it further resolved that the mayor, controller, and city clerk are authorized and directed to execute any and all documents and agreements necessary to complete the construction of straight concrete curb and driveway aprons on Chestnut Street.
Motion?
Motion?
Second.
Discussion.
Lindy was the only company to put in a bid for this project. Funding for this project is going to come out of the city stormwater fund. This, I believe, is in conjunction with the PennDOT paving that's happening, so we always like to do curb kind of before any kind of paving happens, so this is an extension of that project.
PennDOT is paving Chestnut, and we're taking care of it.
Correct. Yep.
Does anybody have any questions?
Just curious, on Walnut Street, isn't that the guy from, is that Guzik on
Guzik.
Walnut? Okay, just one.
Any other questions? A quick question. I know that so we're doing Chestnut Street, or they're doing Chestnut Street, down through town? Or
No, that's city. So
So they're gonna go up.
the state owns Chestnut Street from probably somewhere around,
Where
South
Alden
Main.
comes off.
thank you, South Main Street and up.
Okay.
And they're doing all of that?
No.
They're doing a portion of that. I can't recall exactly what the portion is. It's up towards Alden, is what they're doing.
I was only asking because I know the sewer authority needs cameras down there, and I thought that, if they're gonna do that,
Yeah.
right, like we should all just
Yep,
do it
and we
once.
do try to coordinate once.
Right. Yeah. Okay, roll call.
McKnight.
Aye.
Myers.
Aye.
Roa.
Aye.
Vogel.
Aye.
Kinder.
Aye. Resolution authorized signatures, agreement for professional services with ARC Green Space.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Meadville authorizing signatures on an agreement for professional services at the Art Green Space between the City of Meadville and Porter Consulting Engineers.
Can I get a motion?
Second.
Discussion?
So this agreement is in relation to the ARC's Green Space project. The city applied on behalf of the ARC to DCNR for a grant per the agreement with DCNR. The city is responsible for administering funds, processing payments, and requesting reimbursement. So we would contract with Ashley Porter, and he would be doing the work. You'll see on Appendix 2, it outlines the scope of work that Porter Consulting and Engineering will be engaged in.
So even though we are more or less leasing it for nothing, we're considered the owner for this contract.
Yes.
And are they obliged to provide a certificate of insurance?
I think we have a separate agreement with ARC in
We-
that. So this is just your
yeah.
agreement with Ashley Porter, but we do with the ARC agreement
Yeah.
have their insurance and liability, yes.
Okay, thanks.
And payment to Ashley Porter is being covered by this Department of Conservation Natural Resources grant.
In part, yes.
In part. Or does the rest come from the town?
So this was before my time. It was originally an agreement, from my understanding, of some of the grant funds, some ARC direct contribution. The ARC received some additional grant funding, I think $50,000 from a arts
Pennsylvania Council of the Arts.
arts grants. The city did offer some in-kind services, so this would be some of the paving that's happening along Clinton Court there. So it's not solely the DCNR grant, but a portion of that through various other funding sources.
You're talking about the park as a whole?
Correct.
And so Ashley services are being paid for by that same pot of
Correct.
money?
Yep.
That is made
Yep.
up of DCNR and ARC funding, but not city cash, just we've done in kind, we've paved.
Correct.
And are administering the grant as a match. I think we said we were doing the administration as a match or something. Just making sure we're not for this.
Does anybody have any other questions or?
Ma'am.
Okay, roll call.
McKnight.
Aye.
Myers.
Aye.
Roa.
Aye.
Vogel.
Aye.
Kinder.
Aye. Oh, okay. I was just looking for paper.
Do you have the public comment?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm doing.
Oh.
Public comment on non-agenda items, and I think that's Ron, right?
I've been to 2 different meetings discussing the flooding at our South Main property, and I managed to get a site visit from somebody from the city and point out to them some infrastructure that is not even on your maps. You guys wasted more time on this climate action plan than if you would have actually committed some time to that actual issue, real live issue in this city, we could have come to a resolve. But you made it very, very clear that you do not care about the voice of the people in this city. A majority of the people stood up, showed up, and said that they was not in favor of this climate action plan, but you passed it anyhow because you want control of everyone's property without the financial responsibility. So I'm going to give you an opportunity right now to step up. We have 22 units in the city of Meadville that we are planning on selling. You made that choice for me tonight by saying my voice does not matter. I know I didn't commit 2 years to write a plan. I committed 17 years to building a business, and you don't care. So you take and have your bank supply me a proof of funds letter. I will sell you those units at $40,000 per unit. By noon tomorrow, any one of you, supply me a proof of funds letter from your bank, and you could have 22 units. Because we are done. We are not going to come back to none of these council meetings because it's a complete waste of our time to come here, and you say you want to hear from us, but you don't. And Autumn, you sit there and say, me and I, it is not about us. It is not about our community. It is what you want. So here's what I would suggest to you. You hand in your resignation, and you go find some place that you feel is the utopia. You talk to 10 places that are so much better to live in Meadville. But yet you ran to Allegheny College, and you bust in out-of-town students to vote for you, to put you here to try to change Meadville into something that I want to live in, with no regards to us, to the people, to the residents. And the rest of you followed right along. That you do not care that the people showed up tonight and showed their opposition, and you did what you wanted to do instead of what the people's voices asked you to do. Have a good night.
Well, you have council member statements. Who do I normally go to first? Jim, do you normally go first?
Okay, thanks. I'd like to take a few minutes to thank everyone who showed up to express their opinion, or at least to be here during the discussions on the climate action plan. I'd like to extend thanks on behalf of the city to Meadville Medical Center for providing the venue for us tonight. We definitely needed the space, and we appreciate their generosity. And finally, I'd like to take this time to wish Gary Johnson well in his future endeavors. I still don't think we should allow him to retire or to resign. But we understand he has a chance to be in his home community and have a step upward. So we wish him well on that. That's all, Your Honor.
Gretchen?
Yeah, Gary, I can't believe you're leaving us. Good luck to you. Thank you so much for everything. I really am thankful for all the voices and for everyone who spoke tonight. I really hope that we can move forward together as a community and, take care of everything. It's not hot. It's definitely a hard and challenging time we're living in. And I thank you to my fellow members of council, to staff, as always. So much respect for you. And again, Gary, good luck to you.
Larry?
Yeah, good luck, Gary. Thank you for what you've done. Also, Katie, thank you. I know you did a lot of work on fixing this. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. And I just want to reach out to and say to the people that were here against the climate action. Mrs. Hyatt made a very good comment. She said that we need to stop saying yes or no and look, basically what she's paraphrasing, but look and come to the middle. And I agree with that. Everybody says they want the best for Meadville, but you get on your one side and you're not willing to even look at someone else and listen to someone else's opinion and idea. I was that way, to be honest, recently. But after talking and learning more and making me realize I do care about this town. So if someone has a better idea or a different idea, I am going to at least listen to it. And I would encourage anybody to come, come to council, come to the different groups that are involved with this, and find out for yourself. Don't listen to one side. Come find out for yourself, because there's so much to learn and so much that wasn't said for businesses that can be simply started with this. We have to start somewhere. But I say, if you truly love this city, put your own personal feelings aside and come listen. Bring your input. And I think we should also be receptive to people that live here that have knowledge, like the young lady that stood up. She's got knowledge in the field. There's other people that have knowledge. So we need to be receptive and encourage other people that have knowledge and experience in those fields. And just like to say, that school's over with, but be careful now. The kids are definitely running across streets. Be careful, and I'd just like to say thank you guys, staff for all they've done, Gary for what you've done.
Thank you. Tonight was a big night. Tonight was a long night, but tonight was a big night. We passed the climate action plan, which again has been in the works by lots of hardworking folks who care a lot about this town. For years they've been working on it, so I'm really glad. It doesn't feel like a win because it was a hard night, and honestly I'm getting pretty tired. But I'm in this for the long haul because I love this place, and I've chosen to be here, and I've chosen to buy a house here, and I can assure you that no one is paying me to be here, because that would be reflected in my bank account, and it's not. I can't even get a job here. And yet, here I am. And here lots of us are, right? Like, there are many people that are working really hard, that love this place a lot. If you're out there watching this, I implore you to step up, because again, this is a long haul, right? The climate action plan doesn't solve everything, and it's not everything. We do need jobs. We do need to improve housing conditions in Meadville, right? This was like one thing on a list of like 20 priorities that we set for ourselves in the beginning of the year, right? And it took 6 months to get it through. So we need all hands on deck. We're lucky for the hands that we have who are capable and bright, and are lucky for the hands that we have had that are leaving us. Thank you for all you've done, Gary. It's been good. And yeah, I encourage people to step up and to help out, because as Larry said too, right, we have lots of knowledge, expertise, experience, both lived and learned and everything in between in this town that we can put to good use for our future. Thanks.
Again, Gary, we hate to see you go, right? We appreciate everything you've done throughout the years in Meadville. And I know you're not going to be too far away, so we'll come down and harass you as much as possible. Or at least teach them how to harass you the right way, right? We could do that. I have lived here my whole life. I don't know what qualifies people to be citizens here, whether it's 6 months buying a home, not working at Allegheny College. I'm not sure what that is, right? Does 8 years qualify you to be a citizen here? I know some people believe that if you weren't born here, you're not a citizen here for some reason, and your voice doesn't matter as much, but it does, right? Each person that is here is qualified to be here. They each have a voice. I'm really tired of people disqualifying all of us and finding reasons to separate us and have us not come together, because all that does is make us weaker, right? Our differences, and the people that are coming in, they're valued. We need them. We want them here. They are paying taxes. They are renting here. They are buying things here, and they are helping us, right? So yes, I've lived here my whole life, but I am no less or no more a Meadville citizen than the person that comes last year or the year before that, right? And I think that's a silly way to think of it. And I think that all of our ideas makes this place better. And the fact is, this is my town. This is our town. I'm going to put the me in Meadville, right? I'm here. My family's here. We've chosen to be here. And I refuse to disqualify people because they care about our town and they're doing the work. And they're freaking planting trees here. And they're walking and they're biking and they're here to stay. So we need to be more conscious of what we're talking about, who we're talking about, and who we're talking about when we say Meadville as a community, because that's what we are, all together. And as far as this climate action plan goes, I think it is the most beautiful way to bring us together, to make sure there is a place for our babies. And I don't know what other way to do that, right? To make sure there is a planet for them. And to put one more thing out there, we did listen. We talked to tons of people, not just the people here, but thousands of people. We knocked on doors, and these are concerns that people have here in Meadville. It's not just in Crawford County, it's not just in Pennsylvania, it is not regionalized, it's in every home. We all have concerns here, and a lot of them are recycling, are mulching, our environment. So we considered quite a few things, and nobody's voice was lost. We do want to hear from everyone, regardless of what you think. And I could go on all night, but I'm not going to do that because it's late, and I also have babies to go home to. So with that, I am going to ask for a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
McKnight.
Aye.
Myers.
Aye.
Roa.
Aye.
Vogel. Kinder.
Aye.